All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics of Local America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics of Local. And particularly if you know it's the first Friday, you know it's time for Congressman Donald M. Payne Jr. So he's going to be joining us shortly. So we'll get into a conversation with the congressman, particularly talking about a number of things. I definitely want to have a conversation with them about how they moving the congresswoman around, Ilhan Ohan. So
Oh my
want to talk,
God.
so want to see where that's going and get his view on that. And then Zaid, we got what's coming up at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. We've got two young people who have been here before on other fronts, who are now coming to us on the Cuba Solidarity front. Uh, Chris Duran, one of our young sons who was important in the protests at Seton Hall several years ago for Africana and Latin American studies, just came back from Cuba with Brigada Venceremos, the Venceremos Brigade, an organization that literally grew up with the Cuban Revolution. I used to be a representative for the Venceremos Brigade. And uh, Tee Iriarte, who was with us, she helped usher in a mural for Mumia in Philadelphia, is in Puerto Rico now because her family is from Puerto Rico, but she just came back from a black delegation that went to Cuba and is also doing some important Cuba solidarity work as we get ready for an annual international Cuba Solidarity Conference that's going to take place in March. At 8 o'clock, um, an amazing young woman who I'm very concerned about and I'm very fond of, Merlene Hilaire, who's the mother of Bernard Plessis, will come back to us for a few minutes to talk about how Tyree Nichols and his killing has affected her and mothers like her. Uh, Tomorrow is a national day of action against police brutality in Tyree's name that we did in action already last week in Newark. But she's organizing a rally in Inglewood and her son's name. This is Bernard C. Jr.'s mom, right? And it's going back to city council to continue to raise what they need to raise up for her son on Tuesday. So Inglewood is hot, even though it's cold as hell right now.
Right,
Uh,
right,
and of course, DJ Rhino will do our hip hop update at the end of the show. So it's
right.
a full house, full deck, full deck. We got
Yep.
a lot to do. So let's get ready to ride.
So before we get, before the congressman get here, I was, I was looking at, how they were moving people around in Congress, but they don't seem to be willing to remove Santos around, right? But they seem to be willing to move, Ilhan Omar around and move her off of the assignments. And they're claiming that she has some sort of conflict of interest as it relates to her particular beliefs or her particular stance. And one of the things I heard her say, Zaid, was is that no one else in Congress or uh, are told that they can't bring their experiences to the kind of votes they make, right? So if you're an Italian, then when there's something to be voted on in the Italian community, you've got to kind of throw away your culture and don't bring that to the table when you come to vote. Oh, so you tell Latinos that too. So you tell Jewish folks that too. So you tell every other group of people that they've got to do that. And oh, you don't, or and so, but with her, she's saying that that's what they're telling her, right?
She was
Well,
on a very important, yeah, she's on a very important committee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, right?
yeah,
It's a young uh, African Muslim woman. She's from Somalia, right? Somali immigrant. Somalia was in a really difficult space when she was when she was a child, and she came as an immigrant from a very difficult space in Somalia and worked her way up to really become an extraordinary inspiration for women of color of all stripes in this country by virtue of her presence. Now, as a woman with that background, she does not have the same outlook of defending the Israeli state without any kind of compromise or criticism like so many do.
Right.
And the question of Israel and its treatment of the Palestinians is an old question, right? But the Israeli lobby is a very powerful lobby,
That's
right?
right.
And the right wing has taken advantage of this to try and isolate her voice, but she is not going out without a fight, and we're proud to see that. The other person that needs to be watched in that same regard is Rashida Tlaib, who's in. They're both in Minnesota.
Right.
They're both in Minnesota. Rashida is the first Palestinian woman in
Oh
Congress.
yeah, that's
Right?
right.
She was very outspoken, and from her own perspective, very legitimate, self-determining perspective, right? And that a whole lot of us agree with. Right? I'm gonna say make that plain too. I'm serious solidarity with the Palestinian people for their own liberation and self-determination.
Right.
Uh, she too is a target. She's a very serious target for this effort to try and purge and this, the politics, the order of politics of the day with this right wing Republican Congress is going to be obstruction,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it'll be obstruction.
Oh
So
yeah.
we need to really get ready to deal with what we're gonna have to deal with because they're very intentional about making things difficult. And for all of the madness around George Santos, his district is coming out against him.
Right. Right.
Black, white, and brown, Democrat and Republican.
Right.
Right now, the new guard, the new MAGA guard within the party in the Congress is trying to protect his behind because they don't want to lose a single vote,
Right.
right? Because the balance of power is still close, right? But his district is coming for him.
Right.
His district
Right.
is coming for him. So I think it just may be a matter of time before chickens come all the way to roost for his behind.
Right. Right. And they need to, someone just corrected and said that Rashida is from Michigan.
My
The
my my that's right. I'm sorry. That's right. She's in the Detroit area. That is absolutely right. Right. That's
thank
Tova. Right. And we need at some point we need to do a whole segment around the question of the Palestinian question because we've got some Palestinian folks in the area that are doing some important things. And Tova does good Palestinian solidarity work. Thank you, Tova. I
right.
misspoke. Mhm.
Right. But I think that on the Santos front, you know, obviously I don't know anyone who could have committed those many atrocities, told those many lies, right? And potentially have committed crimes, right? And you hear about all of these investigations that are going on. My concern is how long is it going to take to get these investigations done? Is it going to take 2 years and he's going to be sitting there for 2 years and then voting on some stuff? I mean, and so if you know that this guy's corrupt, you know that this guy can be bought, right? I mean, think about it. Here's a guy that is willing to do all that lying. Who's to say that somebody doesn't come to him, right? Some lobbyists come to him and say, "Hey, man, you know what? We know you're a chief liar already. How about we put a $500,000 in your bank? We want your vote on this, right?" And he's willing to go that way. And that's one of the questions I'd love to have with the congressman. I think that Congress people have got to be above reproach, man.
As a matter of, and that's a national security question that you're raising.
Yeah,
On top of an overwhelming ethical question,
right.
right? That's
And then the question would become, Zaid, what sensitive information is he
exactly
now
right.
privy to?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And all of us as Americans in this country need to be concerned about that because this man has no integrity.
You can't trust this dude with the time of day. The way
Exactly.
he make Pinocchio look like a a church boy.
Right, right, right. So it would seem that not only his district need to be rising up, right, and that's who needs to rise up first, obviously, because they voted for him, but they didn't vote. Well, who they voted for doesn't exist, right?
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
I mean, he completed. He actually made this.
He created this illusion of somebody who does not exist.
Right, right. He made this person up, and so this person doesn't even exist.
George Santos.
George Santos.
Talk about
Yes.
him like a dog.
Yeah. He
George
doesn't.
Santos. Look, I hear y'all talking. I hear y'all talking, and I ain't gotta hear y'all talking about. I know who it is.
Yep. Welcome,
My
Congressman.
colleague.
Well, welcome to
My
the show.
colleague. Thank you, brother.
Yeah,
Colleague.
but Congressman, what I was saying was, and obviously, I mean, you know, my concern is that that's a security risk. Like, what information is this dude now privy to? We know he has no integrity. Like,
Right.
what the hell is he? What information is he learning? And if he could do all that line about himself and money and fees, I mean, what sensitive information, that he's privy to that he might not be willing to sell,
Drop
and
that
that's something we have to think about.
Yeah, it's this dude. Oh, talking about the theater that is now the U.S. Congress. It's a trip.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No
Yeah,
problem.
that's all right. Yeah, so, brother Congressman,
What's happening?
what say you as we launch into the Payne report about the theater that is now the U.S. Congress this week?
I tell you, it's a folly show, week to week, and they're gonna govern by governed by inquiry. They're gonna have all these different staff inquiries into what's going on, and it's a mess, just a mess.
Yeah, man. I tell you, Congressman, I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think it's just. I was telling Zaid, I don't think it's just his district that should be up in arms. I think the entire American public should be up in arms because that's a security risk about it.
Right. Yeah.
And then him down there with y'all. Y'all need to be careful. That he don't give somebody access that they shouldn't have with y'all. Which is incredible.
It's up in the air. It's up in the air about him and the Republicans. If they had won the majority that they thought they were going to win by, they probably would have gotten rid of him. But it's so close for McCarthy now that he can't afford to get rid of the guy. But it's a shame. So really a shame. I think he's going to be dealt with. I don't think he lasts. I don't think he lasted 2 years.
Yeah. And I don't know why he would say that, guys. He said, just let him stay for 2 years. He won't run for re-election. Why? But why?
Well, the thought is that, the people in his district elected him. So, they're trying to use that as a justification, let the people that elected him deal with it. So, but if this was other people, they'd be, screaming for them to be gone. So
yeah, you better not try that stuff you're doing.
It's just the usual. It's just the usual disingenuous nature of the Republican Party today,
right.
And how they're just just hypocrites, and whatever they do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
So they're allowing smoking again in members' offices.
What?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
And
that's against the law. That's against the law in any public building in the country, especially government buildings. But nope, for them, they're allowing smoking again. I mean, it's absolutely absurd.
Wow.
So I went in on them last week, and I went to the floor and admonished them on it, and it got a lot of got a lot of pickup. A lot of people were concerned about it. So, I was really glad to see the coverage on that. But you can smell cigar smoke now in the hallways. I mean, it's absolutely, absolutely absurd, you know?
These guys, man. I mean, it's a circus, man. And so, Congressman, before you came on, and me and Zaid was having this conversation. I said, man, this is, we wanted to get into this. What the hell is going on with them removing, Ilahan Ohan around, and Zaid has some concerns about Rashida, and what's going on, man.
It's basically the Ilhan issue is they hated her before they even met her.
That's right.
And it's just sheer Islamophobe,
Yeah.
is what it is. Sheer Islamophobe. And not even that it's a phobia. They just actually are discriminated and don't like Muslims. And it's the only reason they're doing this is because she's one of the first true Muslims that we've had in the Congress, and they just can't, they just can't stand it. The Israeli, the Jewish members of Congress are watching her all the time. They've kind of had some things to say about her, but they grabbed onto one or two things. One time something came up, and she said it. She said something like it's all about the Benjamins, and so they took that as a slight against Jews, and just been targeting her because she's Muslim, really.
Absolutely, absolutely incredible. And I tell you, man, it just seems like we got fights on every level, on every inch of government, but I don't know, man. If they're allowed to get away with that, then what's next, Congressman?
Yeah,
What's next?
we're worried that it's going to become a tit for tat. So next time we're in power, then we go after someone of theirs. But I don't think we're that petty. The reason that the ramifications from this is that we had removed somebody last Congress, so this is payback for that. And the easiest target was Ilhan Omar. So that's what they did because they don't like her anyway. So let's use this, and there are quite a few, Jewish members on foreign affairs. And so, they obviously protested, and, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense, man. Because it seemed like whenever the Democrats are in power in Congress, it seems like you know the Democratic members are willing to let bygones be bygones and move on. But it seemed like as soon as these guys get in power, they remember whatever they think was done to them, they come back for it and they come hard. And I think that's part a lot of problems that people have in the hood because it just seemed like when the Democrats are in power, there's the Democrats are really more concerned about trying to get legislation passed to change the lives of people that ain't nobody got time to go back and worry about that other stuff.
I mean, absolutely. You look at the transportation infrastructure bill that we passed, some odd $1 trillion. I mean, that's going to reform the transportation systems in this nation. That's a generational thing. They're not going to be able to pass another bill like that,
right?
In the next 20 years, 30 years.
Right.
I mean, what Biden has done along with the Democrats, people don't realize, history is going to be very kind. Everybody talked about, Biden's too old and I don't know if he was the right guy. History is going to be very kind to this guy because he has taken issues by the reins and dealt with them. Obama with healthcare, 7 presidents in a row talked about reforming healthcare. Barack Obama did it.
That's right.
So these issues are huge, and history is going to be kind to both of them. And Biden was part of that administration when they got health care passed.
Right.
So I and y'all know from the beginning I was preaching to y'all, watch Biden, he's the man, watch Biden, he's the man, and he hasn't let me down.
Right.
He has not let me down. There's some, we got to get the George Floyd bill passed, and we got to get the voting rights, the John R. Lewis bill passed. But he's on that with him too, and we don't let him forget about it. So
Right.
no, black folks helped him get there, so he needs to address their issues.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it. I think that we definitely got to make sure we get that George Floyd and policing bill enforced. Particularly if we're gonna get some justice on that front. You
Right.
know, and that's a good place to go right now. So, I mean, what's your feeling on that with the Tyree Nichols?
No.
Man?
What can you say? I mean, do I really have to express it? You know where we are on that. That was a travesty, and I think people are taking advantage of the situation because the officers were black. And so, they're kind of trying to point it back at us. Oh, well, now these black guys now look at. No, we're talking about police injustice and brutality, irrespective of what the person looks like, what the cop, what they look like, who they are. It's an issue around policing.
Right.
And that's the issue. It doesn't black or white. We don't care about that.
Right.
We just happen to see that, for some reason, predominantly Caucasian officers that have this happen, but there's more Caucasian officers in the country anyway. So, the numbers will be higher, but it's just, in the manner in which these officers, mete out, their justice. You can't be the judge, jury, and executioner. So, you have one part to play in it, and none of those are your part to play in it. The judge, the jury, or the executioner. You're supposed to uphold the law, whatever the law is. And obviously, these 5 officers were not playing, by the rules, in which we find out to happen so many times. Really a travesty.
Yeah. Without a doubt, man. I think that, clearly, one of the things for me though, Congressman, I don't know about you, and Zaid, and Zaid, I think you may have heard me say this. For me, whenever I would get stopped, by police, right, I always felt a little better, if it was a black police officer, you know, or either a black police officer with a white police officer. At least I felt like I had a chance to survive. After having seen that, I sort of feel like Mayor Adams felt when he said not only did he feel like, after somebody who had been a police officer served like him, he felt betrayed by the very people who, he thought would keep black people alive.
Right.
And we're talking about somebody who served in the police department for over 20 years. And yeah, and as a black person, I felt betrayed by them brothers,
Right. Yeah.
that not one of them would have enough sense, to say, wait a minute, man, we're going too far. Right.
Yeah.
One of the things, Congressman, that me and John said to each other 30 years ago, we were in our 20s. And John and I said, man, he said, listen, he said, if you ever, and this is before John even had a job, man. He had just graduated from Yale. And, he was like, Ed, man, I need a favor from you. I said, what? He said, man, he said, if you see me doing something stupid, man, as I continue to mature in life, he said, man, he said, pull me back. And I said the same to him. And you telling me, Congressman, if you hang out with 4 other grown men, not one of y'all got enough sense to say we committing a crime?
Right.
Come on, man.
Yeah. No, that.
Why would you even hang out with them guys?
That was wrong on so many levels that it's undescribable. I think that the point you're making is valid, and also what it did, it gave people that you know, act in this way an opening, because now it's black police officers. You
Right.
can't point to, you know, to the issue at hand. Now, you know, you had this, and I've always felt sometimes too, not all the time, but there are a lot of unique times when these type things happen, where the black police officer is trying to show how blue he is, so they might tend to go overboard, you know, before their partner even, because they're just trying to prove that they're part of the team, they're down with the team, they know, you know, how we got to handle this stuff, and so they act out worse than the other person. Um, you know, it's really, really, you know, an interesting uh, issue. So I think that, you know, I was just talking to my sister, and we were talking about that, how, you know, they sometimes folks tend to act out, you know, in order to, you know, show that they're part of the gang, they're part of the group, that they're down with it. So they try to be more down than, you know, so they're included. That, you know, a lot of that happens. You know, a lot of that happened with issues around violence, you know, and gang violence and this and that. You know, the dudes from New York City or the dudes from Newark, you know, if people come out of a different area that, you know, some might think is, you know, in the country or not as cool as that area, then they ramp it up, the scale of the violence, because they want to be looked at, you know, in the same manner and on the same level as the cool areas. Like, you know, everybody wants to be a New York gangster, so, you know, maybe they you know, in like upstate New York, they ramp it up so they're as cool as the dudes in New York. So, you know, there's a lot of different um, issues, you know, in respect to people trying to live up to, you know, what they see in other areas, to try to be as cool or accepted or thought of as another area.
Yeah, but you know, I hope, and Zaid, I'm sure you can speak to this, man. I would hope that you know that this, you know, I've heard Attorney Crump say this, that this should be, you know, the barometer that is used
20
when you,
days.
yeah, you know, when you kill somebody, that, you know, this is how it should happen, right? Not
Right.
these guys go and sit at home, collect a paycheck while you doing
Right.
research. No, I mean, and you
But
know,
that's my point too, and that's my point too, that they were dealt with this expediently.
yeah, we've never
Was it
seen
because they were black?
exactly. That's the question. What do you think, Zaid? Do you think that was
Yeah.
what
What do you
happened?
think, Zach?
Well, absolutely. That was pitifully convenient. It's pitifully convenient. There have been serious complaints. I was trying to get this incredible young sister on. Her name is Amber Sherman from Black Lives Matter in Memphis, right? Folks should know that, you know, this call within the system from this police chief did not just come out of the sky or from the bounty of her heart. She came from Atlanta and brought
Hmm.
these undercover squads with her,
Oh
right?
wow.
It didn't work well in Atlanta,
Mm,
right? Now, what happened is that our kids in Memphis have been in the street and they've been shutting down city blocks and taking over bridges. And that was the background that compelled this police chief to do that, right? That didn't make the news, right?
right.
And I would love to get, I'm going to try and get Amber on next week. She just reached back to me because I was trying to get her on to tonight, and I have a statewide call with our statewide coalition against police brutality Monday. But they're in the street. So that's I said, baby, the streets take priority. That's all right. When you come in from the field, we can talk. It's all good.
Yeah.
So
that was pitifully convenient. That and there is a white officer involved in this, and they're not talking about him as much, and he's on tape saying, what the hell did he say?
He said, "I hope they stomp
stop his ass."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's this. It remains to be seen if this is going to be the new standard of police accountability.
Yeah,
I doubt it. I doubt it very seriously.
Well, if it doesn't, Congressman, I can tell you this: if they don't do that, like Attorney Crump said, then we know they did that because them brothers were black, right? Because we get murdered. I mean, think about what happened to Laquan McDonald in Chicago, right? Think about how all them bullets they gave that young man, right?
Yeah.
All on videotape.
Yeah, and so they kill us heinously. I mean, worse than they do animals. So
and we got cases right here in Jersey too now. Let us not forget Jerome Reed, killed by a black officer who not only was in total control of the situation and didn't merit his using his weapon, but a black officer, as an investigation reveals, had a competing interest with Jerome's lady, his girlfriend. Right? So motive matters when the question of murder is on the table.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Black officer, Carl Dorsey, right? Officer Rod Simpkins, right? When we things were so bad in about 10 years ago in Newark that the ACLU was able to put all these cases together into a single petition for the Justice Department. Simpkins is in the petition. Right? So we got our own right here. Bad policing is bad policing.
Right.
So
exactly.
I have no sympathy for a thuggish cop, no matter his nationality or race. And a black officer doing that, made the chickens come home to roost.
Yeah.
Because if I were going into policing, I'd be going in to protect our community from the violence of criminality and the violence of badass racist cops. And once upon a time, there were black men and women who went into policing who actually stood up and did that. And when they do that, they tend to get targeted for losing their job or being set up to be hurt on their job and all of those kind of things by the police superstructure in terms of how they get down, instead of being protected and lifted up and being the standard bearers for the integrity of the job.
So true. Yep. So true. And I think that, this is, well, I mean, will this be the point of change? I don't think so. I think that, this is too deeply rooted in who and what this country is, that, now here's a great example of institutional issues. This is institutionalized. This is the way this country is run.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? It is not a mistake. Listen, it is not a mistake that Eric Garner and oh my God, George, the other young brother. Oh man.
Ooh, which one? See, that's the thing. So many.
Yeah,
of them.
right.
Mike Brown, which one you want?
No, George. What's in the big one? George Floyd.
Yeah.
George Floyd.
Most known.
Man, yeah. When y'all heard George, y'all couldn't figure it out. Damn, I couldn't get that out of my mouth. George Floyd. But if you look at that and several other issues, lynching in this country was big. And if you look at the way those two brothers and probably a lot of others succumbed to their death, it was all around their necks.
Yeah.
It was on Eric Garner was hung. He was lynched. George Floyd pinned to the ground by his neck. He was lynched. Isn't it interesting how all of these folks come to death in that manner?
Mm. Mm.
Just think how deep that is.
The obsession with the black body.
They're still hanging us.
Mm-hmm.
They're still hanging us. Whether from a tree, by the neck, pinned to the ground.
Yep, that's true.
They are asphyxiating us. Asphyxiating us.
Yeah.
Cutting off our source of oxygen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Once you got somebody handcuffed behind their back and who are not resisting physically, just put them in the damn car.
That's all. That's
put
all.
them in the damn car and take them in.
You've done your job. You've done your job.
You go, why you got the knee and club and taser and they just one right after the other and they just go on and on and on.
And all of those things
things are 80 feet from his house crying for his mama.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at this thing and it's like, why? Why?
Yeah. Yeah. And
they're still hanging us.
Yeah. And here's the thing, the question is, are we becoming numb to this, right? Because
they are.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm glad to see that we're not. Now, that's one of the things that we worried about when we started doing the shutdowns of the streets around gun violence in this town, that our community was getting numb to that. But right now, thankfully, our young folks are not getting numb to this. But the thing is that we have to figure out how to get them to marshal their protest energy into the kind of longer term activism where we're actually putting pressure on these elected officials step by step, person by person, space by space, bit by bit, so we can get some things done.
And wasn't that the whole, I know the larger the majority population in this country has turned it into some type of radical statement, Black Lives Matter. It's because of the point you made, Zay, the numbness in this country. And that was the question that came up with that term. Don't Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
We just see them every day on the news being killed, wiped out. And, there's no outrage. You see, God forbid, some 5-year-old little Caucasian girl go missing, and it's a national search.
Yeah.
But for some child in the inner city to be walking down the street, get hit by a stray bullet, hey, well, she should have ducked. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
The numbness. You're right. The numbness, which manifests and comes out into a term like "Don't Black Lives Matter."
Yeah.
And then naturally, majority of the population
the whole book had Black Lives Ever Mattered.
Right. And that's absolutely true. And then you turn around and you see it turned into some radical, demonic movement in this country. Give me a break.
Stop killing us.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do.
Stop killing. Stop killing my kids. Come on.
Yeah. But y'all know that once the police officer put handcuffs on you, right, and you under arrest, you are now his responsibility, right? Because what can you do with your hands behind your back?
Right.
So police guys, once they handcuff you like that to start beating you, right, they immediately are breaking the law, right? And they are now the criminals. They should be, not only should they be fired immediately, but they should be charged because they're now
Right.
violating their oath, right?
Yeah,
That they
that's
took
right.
to serve and protect.
And they, and
And
they
so,
all and they all lie about that. Of course, they all lie about how they document the incidents, right? And
oh yeah,
these guys, these jokers, they all had they all had body cameras on. They all told the same
Right,
lie.
yeah,
It's just like whatever. Another day at the office. You
right.
know, this one couldn't take it. Too bad.
And
No,
that's the new
and
debate.
and four of them already out on bail, by the way. You
or
know,
they,
Mm.
oh
And
yeah,
that's the new debate. The new debate in this country about, you know, for all those years we would talk about it and they say, well, we don't see it. We don't, we don't have any evidence that happened. Now we got body cameras on and they still don't see it. I mean, we can't, us showing the issue doesn't even matter.
yeah,
They see
yeah,
the tape. You saw Eric Garner. You saw George Floyd. Got the life sucked out of him
cases I
right there
mentioned
on the
here in
street.
Jersey, both of
And
them on videotape.
and we watched it. And we watched it. And
they,
and and that's still not enough. Yeah, don't let your lying eyes fool you. Come
yeah,
on. It's
and
on
that,
tape and they still refuse to acknowledge it.
yeah, yeah, and that's why I was saying that the outcry this time around wasn't as big as it was with George Floyd, right?
Right.
Remember, I mean, it when
Well, that's why
George,
they did that. They did that to head that off.
yeah,
That's really what that was. That was
yeah,
damage control.
right,
We didn't have people, in the public that were there to tape it. The reason we saw George Floyd, it was someone outside of
yeah, the young lady,
the structure, the power structure in the country that got it on tape. So I think that's the difference. Getting these people to show us the tapes from the police is like pulling teeth.
right,
They very reluctantly, provide the information not right away when we normally would like to see it. But there's always some period of time, let things cool off or whatever excuse they come up with. That we got to see George Floyd in real time. That's the
Sure
difference.
did. Sure did. How about the delegation for the Memphis area in Congress? What can you say about the representation of your colleagues in that area, from that area? Where are they?
Well, there's a gentleman who's been in Congress quite a long time. As a matter of fact, it's he's he's Caucasian, and he is the member, you know, from an area. I have to check to see what the actual entire district is, but I mean, he's got Memphis, which has to be, 70% African American. But now, it's being gentrified too. So, those numbers are going back down as opposed to going up. But I think Memphis was in the same position as Newark was, before my father got there. They have a congressman that they like. Um, it should be an African American by now, but Mr. Cohen has done right by those people, and they tend to keep him. But he does not reflect the population from that area. But he does a lot for them. He makes sure that he takes care of them because he's aware of it too. There's no reason there shouldn't be an African American elected in that area, but he's still there. So, and he's a decent guy. He works well, with us. But like I said, he knows where his bread is buttered. So he, he walks with a cane, and he's got one of the African canes that got the power fist on it and what have you. So he's trying to be part of what's going on down there. He knows where his bread is buttered. So he he's all right. I'll say
That's
that.
important. Yeah, that's important. Because it could really be the mess if he wasn't. I saw he went to the funeral. Damon, I didn't know you were coming on. The great Lawrence Ham has just joined us.
Hey,
Congressman, how are
Mr.
you?
Ham, I'm well, sir. Better
Good.
now that I see you.
Well, I'm glad.
Now I'm getting
I'm glad to
scared.
see you.
Now I'm getting scared. I've worn these two brothers down over a period of years where they, you know, they kind of, you know, are glad to see me sometimes. It wasn't always like that, but I think I've kind of worn them down, especially Zay. Zay used to show up at those council meetings and be like, "You sitting in that hot seat, so you go and get it. You're the president. All right, president. Deal with this." Dang. But I think I've worn them down over a period of time. So
you tamed them two tigers. You tamed them tigers.
and two. And it was on that. You're not your father.
Oh, that's funny.
You know what happened? You know what happened, Larry? We all got older. That's what happened. You know what I mean?
Look at my hair.
Yeah. Hey, you know, I got that big I got that vacancy in the back. You know what I'm talking about.
What we figured was is that, you know what, it's better to get along with the congressman because we all in the same damn boat now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Telling the truth.
Plus,
Yeah, that's a damn sure.
plus too, Mr. Ham, if I don't do right, my uncle will definitely put his foot. You know, with you, he ain't playing. You are his man.
We love your uncle.
Oh my God!
He's really been stand up for a long time. He's really
I drove by one day and I saw him out there with the sign, and I kind of ducked my head.
That's funny.
Oh yeah.
And you know, that's something, Larry. I don't really see it. It seemed to me he only attend your rallies. I don't see him with nobody else.
He sure does. And tries to march with us.
And at 90.
That's right. And still trying.
Amazing.
January 15th, he was with us.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's right. He was out there with us on
Joe D.
January 15th.
Joe D can't get rid of him. He's like, when you gonna retire, man?
Yeah.
I hope I can work till I'm 90. Man.
Yeah, God bless him. I mean, you know, he really
gonna have to.
You know, really
have to.
For all of the you know, all of the public service and the success that we've had, you know, serving, you know, our communities. My uncle is the patriarch. He is the one. Our success emanates from him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my father and I are kind of, and him too. You know, he was elected to the assembly, but my uncle has really been the driving force behind all of us. And without him, I don't think any of us could have achieved the things that we've done for our community. So I always make sure, you know, I let people know that, yeah, Donald Payne was the face, but Bill Payne was the driving force and the one that got us started in it, running for district leader in the North Ward in an Italian area. Had the Italian guy. He said, he saw the ladies and everybody working on the books, and he asked, well, how do you get this job? Said, oh, you got to see the man in the back. And he's a, you know, old Italian guy in the North Ward sitting in the back of the room.
With a big cigar.
Yeah, and he said, sir, how do you get involved with this? He says, I decide who does it. And Mom said, oh, okay. And the next year he ran against him and won. So my uncle was the first elected Black district leader in the North Ward.
That's a serious wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
People don't realize what was going on in the North Ward back in them days.
Absolutely. And my uncle subsequently, you know, they all moved to the South Ward, and he ran for councilman at large in the South Ward, living on Renner Avenue. And he was about 300 votes short. But it was really, we grew out of the Bill Payne Civic Association. I don't know if you knew this, Mr. Ham, but Ken Gibson registered to vote in my house on 14 Bach Avenue.
Really?
Wow. Wow.
Pearl Beatty was in the Bill Payne Civic Association, which is how she met Ken Gibson.
I just saw a picture with Pearl Beatty and a bunch of folks just the other night.
Sharp James, when my father came to him, asked him what was the district leader, because my father was organizing in the South Ward. Sharp James didn't even know what a district leader was.
Whoa.
So my father asked him to run for that. So, a lot of stuff people don't realize emanates out of what Bill Payne started. And, it's not being braggadocious. It's just the reality. And a lot of people don't realize it. So
Let me ask both of you this. Did Bill, and I'm sure he probably did he go to Gary in 72? Was a part of the Newark delegation?
I'm not sure. I got to check. I don't think he was.
You said he did the demo?
Okay. No.
No.
Okay.
No, he wasn't there.
He wasn't there. But the other interesting thing in
Bill Payne brought Martin Luther King and Malcolm X to Rutgers University.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, how many people could say that?
Wow.
Yeah, he was president of the college chapter of the NAACP.
That's it.
And
That's it.
had them there. And then also when Dr. King came back to speak at Abyssinian, he was a big major part of that. As a matter of fact, he was supposed to go. He was double parked out front, and Dr. King said, "Bill, why don't you come over to Harry's?" They were going over to Harry Belafonte's in New York for him to stay there. And my uncle was double parked or something. He said, "Well, no, I'll catch you the next time." And we all know, subsequent what happened. But yeah, no, thank you for that, Mr. Ham. He was the impetus of a lot of this. I mean, Ken Gibson registered to vote in my house.
That's deep. I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember he used to live on Rose Terrace, right?
Yes, sir.
Ken Gibson lived on Rose Terrace.
Absolutely. Yep. And my Craig's mother, Craig lived on Rose Terrace back in those days too. Craig Stanley.
Craig was my classmate at our time.
That was your man. Yeah, I know.
That's right. We was close. We was close.
Yeah. The other interesting thing too, Mr. Ham, you probably appreciate this. Steve Adebato, Michael Adebato, Donald Payne, Bill Payne, Leonard Jeffries, and Imam Mir Baraka, all at Barringer at the same time.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Amazing.
Jerry Greco. So that says really something about that group in that time, what they were able to move on to, in terms of their later success.
My mother and her family, that is her parents, they lived in the North Ward before they lived in the Central Ward. My mother used to tell me how bad it was because the Italian kids would chase them home and these are two girls, her and her sister, would chase them home from school every day.
Yeah.
Until finally my mother got tired of running. And my mother was the one that didn't fight. Gladys was the one that would fight.
That's right. I knew your
but
aunt
my mother didn't want to fight. But one day, my mother got tired of running, and she picked up a brick and hit the white boy that was trying to bully her. Now, this had to be like in the 1930s or 40s. I think they went to Abington Avenue School.
Oh.
And the white father tried to step to my grandfather, and my grandfather was like, "No, wasn't your son bullying my daughter?" And he made the boy admit it, and the white guy left it, and they walked away, But it was bad over there, and they left the North Ward to come to the Central Ward, but originally they lived up there in the North Ward. My mother and Gladys went to Abington Avenue School.
Mm. Yeah, you know that North Ward and area. You know, my father and the family grew up in they called Doodletown and or Silver Lake, and
Doodletown.
Silver Lake was in Belleville. So my father and you know they kind of moved around. Their mother died at a very early age, and they were kind of bounced around, and they lived in a lot of different places. But they lived in Silver Lake in Belleville for a while. So they were one of two black families in Belleville. The other family was the Bunches. And out of that family, Lonnie Bunch, who has gone on to become the curator, the chief
African
curator
American
at the
Museum.
Smithsonian Institute.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's from Belleville. He grew up in Belleville.
Yeah. I
And so
didn't realize that. Wow.
He's the one that created the whole structure of the African American. Those were his designs.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to take a tour before they opened it. And he comes to me, he says, Congressman, let me show you something. And I walk around, he comes around the corner. If you go in there, Mr. Bunch has one of the facades from Baxter Terrace, the front door opening of Baxter Terrace there. And he said, I just wanted to show you this because I know you would appreciate it. But there it is, the front door of one of the projects.
Wow.
Baxter Terrace.
Wow. Do you remember Tina Johnson, Congressman?
Not on hand.
She was called Takalifu. In 1973, there was a white riot in the North Ward.
Mm.
And I was at home, and Takalifu called us to come and get her out of there.
Mm.
There was a white riot, and some have you remember Dennis Westbrooks, right?
Yes.
All right. Dennis Westbrooks was a councilman in Central Ward. So we went over there and snuck around the corner to try to get her out of the house. They threw a garbage can through her window. A whole garbage can, not no little. You remember the metal garbage cans like we used to have before we had the plastic ones? They threw a whole garbage can. We were in the house when it happened. Through the front door window. And then somehow we got out of there and got into the car. Don't you know them white people chased us all the way down the avenue until they couldn't run no more after us. But Dennis Westbrooks was the one that was driving, you know, and that was one of the times I thought I might lose my life.
Wow.
You know, it was something, you know, to see at that time.
Did Westbrooks, he served more than one term? I think he was a one term.
No, he was one term. They took him out in 74.
You know, the interesting thing over there, Mr. Ham, up until George Branch, and even after him, you know, they've all been one-term councilmen in the Central
Isn't that
Ward.
something?
I mean,
MacGyver, though, she got reelected.
MacGyver, right? Yeah,
she got reelected.
Right.
But you're right.
Charlie Bell won once and then lost and then won again.
Right.
And he only served one term both times.
Larry Stark's son only served one term.
Stevie.
Steven Starks, right? What about
Gary?
Buddy Gee? What about Buddy Gee?
No, he was there. He served about 3 or 4 terms.
He served a couple. He did serve a couple of terms, right? George Branch. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of his name.
Buddy Gee, right.
Buddy Gee's his gym name.
That's his boxing name. Yeah.
That's his boxing name.
Yeah,
you know him, Ed. You know George Branch, Ed.
George Branch was the one who actually created the boxing program that I was a part of at Shabazz High School.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when we would have, I mean, some of the first bouts that I was involved in, he was the one who put them together at Shabazz, you know. So, you know, and I was a young man. You got to remember, I was young, you know, when I was at Marcus Garvey, you know what I mean? And then I went to Barringer High School. And
you went to Barringer too? All the great ones went to Barringer.
So, you know, and I lived on 4th Street. You know what I mean? So
All
when
right.
Sterling Street, we moved to 4th Street in the North Ward, and but yeah, man, George Branch was, I mean, he created that program for all them young kids, man. Gave out all them. I got a lot of trophies, man, from George Branch when I was a young kid.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
he
knew
was.
he was in boxing. I didn't know the depth of it though.
yeah, man.
I didn't know he created the program.
Up until his older age, man, he would still come to the gym on 8th Street, and he would come in there and shadow box with all of the young guys and everything. He still had the moves, you know what I mean? I
Uh-huh.
never seen
Right.
him box anybody, but he'd be in there as an older councilman, just bouncing around, moving around. He was a council a councilman. You probably remember he was a sharp dresser like you, man, back in the
Oh
day.
yeah. No, he had the splendor.
Yeah.
That's for
Remember,
sure.
remember that place, Joe Chameleon? Remember that downtown Newark, that old Italian dude that made the suits? That's where he
Yep.
got his suits made at, man.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
And he believed in being sharp. Bought all his clothes on Brantford Place, man.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
Those
deep.
were the days, man. You know,
Yeah.
that's the history of Newark, man. That
Oh
we don't,
man, I
you know.
love these type of conversations. Um, and I know you remember Kauai Towers and that whole
Oh yeah.
that was that was really really a serious situation up there. And
whole frontal attack on segregation in the North Ward. What it
Yep.
was.
You know,
Came
guys.
close too.
Guys, when we out of time, man, but we gotta, have these kind of conversations, man.
oh
You
yeah,
know, and really kind of lay out the history of Newark, all those people who don't really know the history, and we gotta. And this is Black History Month. This is the time we should be doing it, right?
absolutely. Oh
Talking
yeah,
about
happy
all the
Black
cats
History
who
Month
laid that,
to all of you.
Yep. Happy Black
Absolutely.
History Month, y'all. We should be doing that, man. Laying out the history, so that people get it, man.
Your father was a real
Yeah.
trailblazer. You know, Adonisio was the congressman when I was in high school, and
Right.
he gave me my first scholarship. The very
Wow.
first scholarship I got my senior year, I got it from Congressman Adonisio. People don't know he served 18 consecutive terms, 36
Oh,
years.
he was 36 years in Congress.
36 years consecutive, 18 consecutive 2-year terms. But your father knocked him out the box. Even his fame from the Watergate. Remember, he was the chair.
Oh no,
of the
Rodino.
committee.
Rodino.
Isn't that what
Not
I said?
Adonisio.
You said
What I say,
Adonisio.
Adonisio?
Yeah, that's why I was a little
Oh
worried.
Lord,
But
I'm getting old.
But Adonisio
Rodino.
was in Congress though.
Yes, Adonisio wasn't cut
Congress,
before he
and
was mayor.
Came
Before
back,
he was
right.
mayor.
He came back to run for mayor of Newark.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about Rodino.
So I got
18 consecutive terms.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, we all remember.
And his father knocked him out.
Yeah.
Well,
Even with
And he
all that
conceded.
fame.
One thing is Rodino conceded. He said, we're in a time where we should have a black congressman. He is. He's
you know what? You know what happened? A lot of the Italians that were still involved in politics were saying, they were turning on him and said it's Payne's time, And so, he's sort of writing on the wall when his folks were telling him that it was Payne. He knew it was time to go. But the interesting thing about that seat, Larry, is that in 82 years, it only had 3 Congress people.
Wow.
There was the guy before Rodino was Congressman Hartley. The Taft-Hartley Act?
Yes, that was him.
That was him.
Wow.
And after him, he had been there for 40 years, came Rodino for 40 years. Woo. So that once my father took it, there had only been 3 Congress people in 100 years. And then I came along.
Wow.
That's something. But Rodino was really kind of what they call a backbencher. It was Watergate that gave him gave him stature, but he wasn't really thought of very highly in Congress. Kind of quiet.
Right.
But I can tell you some. When we're off the air, I can tell y'all some stories about what his community said about him. So,
well, Congressman, we come to the end of the Payne report.
All right.
Just want to say thank you, man, for coming through.
Just when we were warming up.
Man, we got a shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, people came in and then took it to another level. That's right.
Absolutely. Always.
Well, we'll give you the last word, Congressman. We'll give you the last word.
Let me just say that I really appreciate the platform that you're giving me in order to speak to the folks in our community, and keep trying to earn their support. I really appreciate the opportunity they afford me to be their representative, their voice in Washington, and I don't take it lightly. So just want to thank everybody. And Mr. Ham, I was thinking about you over the last 2 weeks that I got to come back and address your group.
There you go.
It's been a minute. Yeah, you do. Yeah.
All right.
I'm glad I came on tonight.
Yes, sir.
What about a spot? Hey, Congressman,
we gotta meet up at our rendezvous spot.
Our office.
Yes.
7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Hey, Congressman, I gotta ask you something on the air publicly, man, that I think I want you to think about. All right.
Okay.
Think about before the month end, us doing a special Payne report with Bill Payne to do it for Black History Month.
That would be.
We could put together a round table with Larry, with Bill,
that would be awesome.
with yourself.
That'd be great.
Think about maybe one other, and be a special Payne report on the history.
Yeah,
right.
That's an all politics and local special right there.
Right.
So
putting you on the spot. So let's
come
up with it.
Oh no, he'd be honored. He would love it.
And let's do that. Yeah. So think about it. And then one of these Fridays before the end of this month for Black History Month, let's do it. Okay. And then I can come back on and tell my little spot in history that I'm very proud of. Anytime somebody asks Jim Clyburn about how the Biden thing came together, he will say, I'm not sure. I don't remember. Ask Donald Payne. I was in the room. Mr. Ham, when the deal was cut with Biden. Really? Yeah. One of four people. So we get on and tell that story. Deal too. so we're gonna do that as an hour special before the end of the month, and let's get it done. You know what I mean? Because there's some stuff you got that listen, Larry, I don't know if you know, but there's some stuff that Congressman Payne shared with us when he was the president of the council, some of the things he learned about his power and how to wield that and all of that. Let me tell you something. That's what young people who are city councils need to understand. All of that information while he's still alive. Yeah. He shared it with us. Absolutely. And so we need to do that for Black History Month, Congressman. I got you on the spot, brother.
Great idea.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Thank you,
Congressman. That's not a spot. That's an honor.
Okay, brother. Then we're gonna come up with that date. All right, man.
Okay.
Friday, February 24th. Hold the date.
All right. Take care.
All right, brother. All right, man. So I see a number of people in the back.
Should be it.
Now I didn't get to say goodbye to the congressman. I had 10 questions for him.
Yeah, right.
10 questions.
I'm sure you did. That's why we ain't put you in.
I know.
You should wait till 7 o'clock to ask them.
I had 10 questions for him. Yep. Is that Hakeem? Who's that in the back? That's
should be Chris coming on.
Oh, Mr. Baltimore?
No, Chris Duran, for our City Hall student.
Chris Randall? Oh.
There you go. There you go. Man. Now, Demi, you walk into a loaded session and Merlene is supposed to be coming on at 8 o'clock. All right.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. So, this segment, we're going to have well, I'm very glad to have these two young people back. They're doing some incredible things. Most of y'all know Chris from the powerful mobilization that he did when he was at Seton Hall. And he was on recently with the most current wave of students trying to be heard at Seton Hall around Africana Studies and Justice for Black Students. Tee Iriarte is back. She was with us a little while ago around some of the important recent developments that we had on Mumia. Both have just come back from two different trips from Cuba, and we're going to talk a bit about Cuba's solidarity and what that looks like at this particular moment. And it's and I'm gonna tell you, as an old head, it's really refreshing to see heads your age, really taking some ownership of this work, right? Because a lot of us are really just like, we're grand and fading. Tomorrow I'm supposed to go to a memorial for one of my favorite comrades in Cuba Solidarity work, Frankie Valgaro, a bold Puerto Rican independentista who's been one of our most solid soldiers for Cuba Solidarity that we've done together for years. But we're getting up in age now. So it's really good to see both of you back. So welcome to the show. T, you're actually home in PR. Why don't you? And last week, and then I wanted you on last week because I had we did a spotlight on Arturo Schomburg with one of our local scholars, Timur Davis, who's got a book out on Schomburg, and we want to really take apart that Black, Cuban, Puerto Rican, old solidarity legacy that still is underappreciated amongst our respective peoples. So I mean, and you ain't just home, checking on mama and your cousin and whatnot. You're actually doing some things in PR that are very instructive. So why don't you tell us about what you're doing in PR, and then we'll segue into your trip to Cuba, your most recent trip to Cuba.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Tyrese Iriarte Medina. I am an Afro-Cuban and Puerto Rican woman living in Puerto Rico, but originally from Brooklyn. I just landed yesterday back in Puerto Rico, back in Puerto Rico. I've been in Cuba for the last week and a half, doing some solidarity work, attending conference and everything. So here in Puerto Rico, we have some solidarity groups as well. But I am doing more mutual aid efforts in the realm of sustainability for Puerto Rico. I started a Soul to Soul Freedom Project in 2017. So that's the core of my work here. The Soul to Soul Freedom Project focuses on cooperative movements here on the island. Because as you know, we have a crumbling infrastructure here in Puerto Rico. And it's gets worse with every disaster that comes through here, in addition to the oppressive forces that are extracting resources from the island. So we are kind of combating imperialism. We're combating a lot of the oppression that is coming from the United States in the realm of the Jones Act, which has control over our imports and exports, and the lack of resources, valuable resources that we need coming into the island from other countries in the realm of trade. So, with that being said, things can be a lot more expensive here on the island than me being able to access it outside of the island. So, what's happening now is many people in Loíza, specifically, which is the most Afro Puerto Rican, one part of the most Afro Puerto Rican population here on the island, they also are excluded from a lot of that particular pueblo is also excluded from a lot of resources often. And they're dealing with a number of issues in the realm of sustainable electricity and water sources. So oftentimes when disasters happen here on the island, Louisa suffers more because they are on the border of a lagoon and also the beach. So they're in a coastal area. And so the flood waters tend to affect that particular area much more, which means they have longer power outages. They also have longer periods without water because a lot of their water comes directly from the rainforest from El Yunque. So oftentimes there's a lot of issues with being able to have access to water right after a storm or access to food right after a storm, because once the refrigerators and stoves are damaged by the water, there's nothing, they won't have any access to food immediately. So that's where people like myself and Soul to Soul Freedom Project and La 23 and some of my other comrades come in to assist with getting those resources to our elders and community and families in those particular areas of Loíza. So long story short, the Soul to Soul Freedom Project is a project that I started in 2017. But I was already doing like a lot of the mutual aid work, but the Soul to Soul Freedom Project is was born out of the necessity to create a more sustainable Puerto Rico because of our crumbling infrastructure, because of the ongoing need for our community. So one of the issues that I'm focused on now is getting solar panels into all the homes that need it, and also repairing roofs alongside my brother's organization and the community La 23 and La Jardinea. So we are trying to get as many solar panels there as possible, because the issue with the lights is a larger macro issue on the island with the company who controls the electrical grid here, which is called Luma. And because they have poorly, for the lack of a better word, poorly managed or mismanaged, they've mismanaged the whole contract that they've had with the control of the electrical grid. We often go we have often blackouts and power outages on a consistent basis. So solar energy will control for a lot of that. And so this particular area, because they are more vulnerable in that particular regard, that is the area that I am focused on right now. But eventually the Soul to Soul Freedom Project will be able to assist more of the most economically distressed areas on the island. That happen to be predominantly Afro descendants. So that's for Puerto Rico. And then we can, I guess, talk about Cuba here shortly.
Yeah. So that's important. The context matters,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then one of the things that we need to also figure out as we face the challenges of resources and services and those essential things that we need, that we can pool our resources and do certain things in a certain way to make a difference in our own lives and take responsibility for changing our own conditions, and not allowing ourselves to be so psychologically defeated by the colonial structure that dominates our lives, right? And not allowing us to do what we can do in spite of those systematic things that have been holding us back. So there are great stories underneath what you're talking about, and we need to have. And we said I still look forward to making some time when you can come in and really take that apart as to what that means, because we know that you're not just doing that in PR, that you're also doing that in Mexico. You know, those are stories that need to be told, and I'm so proud of so many women, so many Afro descendant women who are moving forward with these kind of organized structures, right? Led by their heightened consciousness of who they are as African descendant women. That's happening from throughout the Southern Hemisphere. That definitely needs to be picked up and affirmed. So I'm very proud of it that you're doing. Now, tell us about the delegation that you went on, right? The conference that you just went on. Let's segue now, and let's just jump on into the Cuba conversation.
Okay. Well, one thing I forgot to say is Happy Black History Month to everyone. And thanks again for having me on the show. But also, I'm an art curator. So part of the work that I do is socially engaged art. So that allows me to come into different spaces and utilize my curatorial work to do the work in the community, but that intersection is imbricated with the work that the movement work that I've been doing over the years, the past 25 years, in different capacities. So with Cuba specifically, I am a member of the New York, New Jersey Cuba Seed Coalition. And so they wanted me to be a delegate to come to the conference, because I am working on an oral histories project alongside the University of Havana, as well as the La Federación de las Mujeres Cubanas, which is the Women's Federation in Cuba. And so I will be doing ongoing oral histories project on Africa and Cuba, solidarity, and the historical aspects of the Cuban Africa solidarity movements. And so there is a film, also a documentary that is that was made by Brother Nagash. And we'll be doing film screenings in different cities and different areas over the course of the next couple of years. So
name the film.
Cuba in Africa.
Of course.
And you can go to cubainafrica.com.
I want to pull it all out of you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'll put that in the chat if need be. But yeah, so I went on the delegation, and I actually, like I said, I'm part of Cuba C, but I went with a Pan-African organization, African Awareness Association, coordinated by Lee Robinson. And we had people from different organizations in our particular delegation this time around. And so we went with the intention to attend the conference. So we attended the World Balance Conference. And that was an amazing experience, and that I was able to coordinate with other comrades on the ground around how to strategize around building movements and direct action to push out the message of ending the U.S. blockade on Cuba. And I also got to speak on panels. I got to meet the president of Cuba. And so, sorry, I'm like in transit right now in movement.
Okay,
so yeah, so I actually was able to also meet with some women that were Afro descent, and during that time period. So that was a blessing. Sorry, I had to turn my car. I'm in my car. I'm moving between places. But was able to meet with a lot of different women that are already leading movements in different cities, and during the course of that conference. And so a lot of people talked about what their actions would be coming up for May Day, and also coming up for July 26th. And so that's going to be very important.
July 26th is the anniversary of the launching of the Cuban Revolution back in 1963, for those not familiar with the date. No, continue.
Okay, I'm going to turn my volume up a little bit. Can you hear me okay?
No, we hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, thank you for that, Baba Saeed. Yeah, that's an important part of the history.
Mm-hmm. And there's no May Day like May Day in Havana, Cuba.
Right.
I swear by all the God of our ancestors and every ancestor we can think of. May Day rocks in Cuba, all right?
Absolutely. And I have to present my work in Paris this summer, my curatorial research, which focuses on Afro Latinx women who are leading solidarity economies in different parts of the Afro Latinx diaspora, from Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, like certain which you mentioned. So I'll be presenting that work, but I'm thinking I can be there in time for May Day, because I have to also be in Philadelphia to speak on the Malcolm X panel in May. So I think the earlier part, I can make my way back down to Cuba for that. So looking forward to participating in that as well. And again, building up some momentum leading up to that, to May Day, because that's a huge part of the labor movement, and solidarity with Cuban workers as well.
That's right. Now, before I bring Chris into this conversation, the Oral History Project, who is going to be the focus of the people? Now, you mentioned the Afro-Cuban connection. Be a little more specific in terms of who you're actually going to be some of the folks you're going to be interviewing for the oral history project.
Well, the oral history project is already formulated between, like I said, the University of Havana, and the Federation of Women, the Women's Federation in Cuba. And so there's a magazine that will be printed about the work that's being done, but also it is focused around a documentary that chronicles the history of Cuban solidarity in Africa. Fidel sending 300,000 soldiers over to Africa to fight on behalf of and alongside soldiers on the ground in Africa, in the Congo, in Angola specifically, in South Africa to help free Mandela. Also having the Cuban comrades on the ground there. So this
all culminated in what we call the epic battle of Quito Carnival.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
So
now, you already know.
No, listen, you got
as
two
we say
old
in Spanish,
heads
ya tú sabes. Sí.
Yeah, we got two old heads here who cut a lot of our civil disobedience teeth doing Southern African solidarity work. Right? Right. Adima, I was hoping you were gonna jump in and
yeah. Could I ask one question?
Yes, that's why I'm trying to open the door for you. Come on,
sister. I just want to ask a question, not make a statement. Recently in Congress, a bill was introduced for a plebiscite on the status of Puerto Rico, which deals with the whole question of whether Puerto Rico would be independent, would remain a commonwealth, or would consider statehood. In your dealings with the people of Puerto Rico today, what sense do you get as to where people are at in that struggle? Many years ago, and when I say many, I mean many, it might have actually been 1975, Juan Mari Bras of I believe it was the Puerto Rican Socialist Party, spoke at Madison Square Garden in New York City, and I went to hear him. And I had very little knowledge of the Puerto Rican independence movement at that time. And Madison Square Garden was packed out. And if you had been there, you would have said that, independence for Puerto Rico was right around the corner.
That's right.
But here we are now, 48 years later, and the status is Puerto Rico is not really clear. So how do people see that question today? Thank you for letting me ask that, Zaid.
Of course. Thank you for that question. That comes up a lot. And again, it's exactly what you said, a plebiscite. It's been presented in Congress. This particular question has been presented in Congress a number of times as a referendum. And this is not the first go round with this particular subject matter. So in Puerto Rico in particular, there's division. Obviously, you have some of the old guard that wants to kind of hold on to the United States in hopes that it will provide us with all the economic backing that we need. But if you think about it, folks like me who are independistas are looking at the fact that they owe us reparations. So if we were provided reparations, we would be self-determined folks who are able to sustain ourselves, because we are an agricultural island. We are an agricultural country. We can survive, but we have a lot of different people who are divided at this point, because if Puerto Rico, there are several political parties here. And so even local elections are, we have high turnouts for local elections, but the local elections are often dominated by the old guard, the PNP, which is our most conservative party here in Puerto Rico. So I think now the younger generations and some of the the older independistas are that intergenerational connection there. We'll continue the fight, obviously, to make sure that Puerto Rico, we're fighting for Puerto Rican independence, but you are going to have some divisions on the ground, and that's been some of the issues, whether local or on a global context, that we've been dealing with here. So we'll see what happens, but la lucha continua, as far as I'm concerned. The fight continues, the struggle continues.
Sí, Puerto Rico Libre. Chris Duran, you just came back from Cuba with my old organization. I used to be a regional representative for Brigada Venceremos. Tell us about your trip. The Venceremos Brigade, for everyone, is the it was called a North American Solidarity Organization that literally came of age for Cuba's first national independent harvest after the revolution. And it was built on taking folks from the United States to Cuba, right, to see the reality of the Cuban experience and to use their experience in Cuba to come back to the United States to educate the American landscape around the reality of Cuba and to undo all of the negative anti-communist militarist dictatorship hype that had been used to isolate Cuba and to perpetuate this backwards blockade that's older than I am, that we're still fighting against. Chris, you went with the Venceremos Brigade. Tell us about your trip.
Yeah, please, thank you for having me back on the show. But yeah, I was with the 51st contingent of the Venceremos Brigade.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, they're going to have a 52nd, coming up the next year. But the Venceremos Brigade is currently united around a few principles of unity, including the closing of the illegal naval base at Guantanamo that the U.S. still holds, taking Cuba off the terrorist watch list, the right of people to freely travel, and of course the ending of the blockade, which is designed to pretty much choke out Cuba until they can overthrow its government. All of which are, unilateral actions by the United States government, and that the Cuban people have had to struggle against since 1961, when the blockade was implemented. But yeah, one of the important things about the Venceremos Brigade is that the trips that it takes people on is that it is an educational trip. It is a solidarity-based trip. We bring material aid to the people of Cuba, to organizations in Cuba to distribute. In local communities, we're not just there for tourism. We're there to learn about the Cuban Revolution, about the Cuban experience, and like you said, bring those lessons back and deepen our own commitments to internationalism in our local organizing.
So what did you get to see when you were there, and what is your next? And it looks like we lost T. I wanted to bring her back in the conversation because she's got her hands on the conference that's coming up in March. I hope she can get back on. She's coming back in, right? So what part of the island did you get to see, right? What did you learn, right? And what do you want to share with us that you learned that's important for folks to know? Right, and what's on the horizon on the matter of solidarity on the state side that you prioritize?
Yeah. Well, we got to experience a lot. So there were, just in 11 days, we went through a lot of different programs. But we were on primarily the eastern part of the island. We spent several days in Santiago, in Camagüey, and a couple other smaller cities. We got to learn from different, for example, we did a program on the new family code, which was passed by referendum in Cuba in the past year. And so we got to learn about that, got to hear from LGBTQ activists in Cuba who were a part of the process of organizing people to get out the vote in favor of it. And we there are several different things I can run down. I mean, we went and visited and paid our respects to the late Comandante Fidel Castro at his gravesite, where actually next to his grave there is a monument to all the internationalist, fighters from Santiago, Cuba, who were participants in the liberation war for Angola, as well as Nicaragua. What was the most interesting thing about that day is that was right before the Family Code program, and there were a couple of veterans from the war in Angola at the Family Code program.
They're very proud.
Yeah, so you got to see very concretely, the sacrifices made during the revolution. You get to see, concrete examples, and evidence of, this anti-colonialist struggle, this, the anti-colonial nature of, this socialist revolution in practice, in the, of this revolutionary process in a current time. And I think that was very powerful for a lot of people to see.
Well, let me ask you this too, also, Chris, because you have your own Latin American background. Tell folks from your own vantage point where your family is from and what Cuba means to Latin America at this point in this time, and what it's been, and and why that solidarity is getting some fresh legs and some fresh wings in this particular climate, in spite of the madness that we got going on, and with crazy people like the Trumps and the Bolsonaros and all of these kind of crazy people.
Yeah. So, like you said, my dad and his family is, they're from Chile. I actually had the chance to go to Chile a couple months before Cuba, and seeing the kind of contrast of similar conditions that exist in Latin America, and the way that socialism addresses people's basic needs and human rights. Seeing that contrast between the two countries, I think was very powerful. I think to the left in Latin America, the fact that Cuba has been able to survive, the fact that Nicaragua has been able to survive, the fact that the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela has been able to survive, are very powerful examples. In terms of waging a struggle against imperialism, waging a struggle to build a different world, and being the sort of strong points of a movement that is trying to, like you said, trying to gain fresh legs, with the election again of Lula, the fact that the right in Brazil is trying to reverse that. You have countries going, you have Peru right now, which is going through pretty much a coup that the U.S. is very much silent on, just as the U.S. is silent on issues in Palestine, while they're heightening, trying to start World War III with Russia and China. But for the left in Latin America, Cuba has always been a very strong point of solidarity. Obviously in Nicaragua, they've sacrificed a lot. In Venezuela, they sacrificed a lot. A lot of the doctors in Latin America and the Caribbean are trained by Cuban doctors. And, they've just on a basic human rights level, they've always been a solid resource for people.
Let me just lift up a Newark story that's important to this conversation that you just laid out, Chris, and thank you for that. There's a young filmmaker, which is younger than us, right? Jen Wager, who teaches at Essex County College, who did an incredible film that has been internationally celebrated on the story of Cuba's international medical school that has, as you just described, Chris, trained a lot of doctors that have throughout, the Latin American diaspora, including doctors from Black and brown communities here in the United States. And that's a story we have time I'll come back to because that'll blow some minds. That's important. So Dare to Dream, right? There's a film that also needs to be in your video haunts, in your video searches. Dare to Dream is an important solidarity film that was done by filmmaker Jennifer Wager, who lives right here in Newark, New Jersey, and teaches at Essex County College. Now, let's move forward, right? Coming from gatherings like that, we got stuff to do. We got stuff to lift up. So what's on the table now? I want both of y'all just jump in as you see fit. what's on the table now, things that the community needs to be looking towards and looking forward to in terms of education and solidarity expression that's important for all of us to support.
Well, a lot of what Chris spoke on, I think we still need to be thinking of envisioning a unity consciousness around what revolution looks like, what a liberated future looks like for both Puerto Rico or Cuba, and for many of our other brothers and sisters who are being oppressed around the world, racialized folks are being oppressed around the world. So I am always in pursuit of global liberation. And so I think specifically for Cuba, we need to try to get Cuba off the state sponsors of terrorism list. And that's the high demand that we have currently. And that's something globally that people can help with, people can organize around, and we can try to bring to the forefront of the political education realm. So that's extremely important. And related to that, the Cuba C, New York, New Jersey Coalition, Cuba C, who is the organization that I belong to, in coordinating a conference, the International Cuba Normalization Conference, which will be happening March 10th through the 12th at Fordham Law in New York. I'm hoping all your listeners can make it. It will be education and direct action oriented. So I would love to see that we will have multiple diverse panels, from women to youth to African diaspora, speakers from all over the world coming in to contribute to this particular conference. And so I invite you all to come to learn and to be in communion with us, so that we can build a stronger solidarity movement and continue to expand on, again, our unity consciousness and what it means to create real revolution in a global way, but specifically as it relates to building a stronger movement of solidarity with Cuba.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what would you add to that?
I think one of the most important impressions that I got while in Cuba, we worked very closely with ECAP, which is the Cuban basically Institute for People's Friendship. So that they facilitated much of our trip there. And the head of the institute is a former member of the Cuban Five. So if people aren't familiar, he was a political prisoner here in the United States.
Name him.
Fernando Gonzalez York. He was a member of the Cuban Five. He was, in contact with a lot of political prisoners from movements, anti-colonial movements here in the United States, including the recently released Sandiata Acoli. And I think remembering the fact that Cuba has always stood in solidarity with political prisoners from the United States. Obviously we know Asada Shakur, Nahanda Abiodun, who was recently her transition anniversary was a few days ago.
That's right.
But they've always released statements and advocating for the release of Mumia Abu Jamal, who has a court date coming up. But I think that in terms of organizing around our political prisoners here in the United States, whether they be veterans of the Black Panther Party, of the American Indian Movement, of other movements that captured revolutionary consciousness and imagination from a couple generations before mine, prior to the COINTEL-inspired tactics of trying to separate such ideology from the youth, which was explicitly an aim of COINTELPRO, which is why we have political prisoners, which is why they pursued people who were in groups like this well past the 1970s. Building movements that bring that ideology and that awareness of political prisoners and the lessons of their, political ideology to whatever mass organizations we're working on the ground definitely connects us to, an internationalist perspective as well, and directly connects us to internationalist struggles such as that of the Cuban Revolution, such as that of the fact that we have political prisoners here in the United States that are members of Colombian anti-colonial movements like the FARC. We have Palestinian political prisoners. I mean, we pay our tax dollars go to putting Palestinians in prison for resisting Israeli apartheid, and so we have a responsibility to connect on a local level. Um, just through honoring like our own movements here in the United States.
We had Charles Barron on a little while, and thank you, Chris. I wanted to also acknowledge the folks. You referenced the Cuban Five back in the '90s. Five men from Cuba who were doing security work for their respective countries saw, by virtue of the nature of their intelligence gathering responsibilities, that there was terroristic activity that was certainly being cranked up and ready to attack Cuba covertly, coming from the United States, and doing what they thought their responsibility was. They reported it in to American officials, right? And upon their reporting that in to American officials, in the interest of brokering peace and being responsible for each other's mutual security, the American officials took them into custody, and they did quite a few years in U.S. custody as a consequence of trying to stand up for peace, and the work that a whole lot of us did to lift them up and pushing for their release was another one of the many stories of our epic battles against repression here in the United States that needs to be lifted up. So I just wanted to give folks some background on that. And I was trying to catch up with the great Gail Walker, who's also a Jersey legend, right? Her father, Lucius Walker, is from Roselle, New Jersey, the town where I went to high school many years ago. And we had Charles Barron on just a few weeks ago. And in fact, we had Charles on the same show that we had T and Tova on a few weeks ago. And Charles recently introduced a resolution, and not the first one, but a resolution in New York City Council to call for the end of the blockade. And there have been over 25 city councils that have done that over the last several years. Baltimore, Boston, Cleveland, quite a few towns have done that, and it would be powerful if we could get the cities here on the East Coast, New York and Newark, to be able to do that too. But of course, that's going to require some work on the ground to turn our city councils around to understand that. But well, would each of you like to comment on the strategic importance of why that work is important?
You want to go, Chris, or you want me to go?
Yeah, either one. Just
I'll
jump
say
in.
I spoke last, so I don't know. But yeah, in terms of strategic importance, I think that again, just the point that we have several, the people are not paying attention in some ways. A lot of times people like to be radicals but not pay attention to like laws that are being passed through city council or on a state level, or even leveraging what resources they get from that, if needed. There's several laws, being considered right now in the state of New Jersey. People are talking about the assault on like critical race theory in Florida. You have that right here. New Jersey has two of the senators that are, the biggest endorsers of things like Israeli apartheid, or actually, Israeli ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. We could very easily say that, as well as the blockade against Cuba and continuing sanctions, in Bob Menendez and Cory Booker. And if, there isn't pressure, put on people like that at all levels, and also to free political prisoners, if there isn't that kind of mass movement built on the ground, and also organization to sustain those movements instead of just trusting people, in elected positions to just carry out on that, struggle as individuals in a system that is not going to represent those principles, then, it makes, our job, a lot tougher. We saw right now Ilhan Omar is being forced off of, Committee on Foreign Relations.
That's right.
But In order to try and stay on that, she reversed the position of being critical of Israel. She very quickly took a position condemning any anti-Semitism and criticism of Israel. She, endorsed a bill that would provide weapons to Israel. So, again, we cannot trust this up to individualism, up to individual elected officials. And, there needs to be mass pressure on those state houses, to even get those things passed or reversed.
T, what say you?
Yeah, I echo Chris's sentiments and analysis around us staying informed, one, but also developing again a strong unity consciousness about how we want to approach these things and stay informed. Primarily because bills get passed behind closed doors. People again are in the dark around a lot of local issues. Not to mention national issues and global issues that are manifesting in real time and happening in real time. And so I do understand that people often become jaded by the systems that are continue to again oppress us, but we have to realize that you must know your enemy's strategy. And again, we need to build stronger solidarity movements around again political prisoners. As you know, I am a part of the campaign to free Mumia and have been for quite some time, and and many of my comrades, but again, this a lot of people will build the momentum and then fall off. But these are things that we have to continue applying the pressure specifically on our local officials because they need to be held accountable. In New York, as Mayor Adams is the antithesis of what a black man, specifically a black man in a position of power, should represent. He in fact goes against many of in any type of progressive movements that would happen in New York. He has increased police presence. He has reduced resources in even cutting resources for the public library, for the school system, for the college, the community colleges, for the local colleges. He has cut resources to the very libraries where we need to be getting information, right? This is our sources of information. Our libraries are some of the most important institutions that we rely on for education and resource and knowledge. And to strengthen our knowledge bases around political issues and or local issues or even history. So, I think, we really have to start again, taking initiative to build a stronger movement around educating our folks on a constant basis, but also making sure that we are forming a rigorous analysis around what a liberated future and a liberated present looks like. We are in Black History Month, but we are also in Black Futures and Black Present Month, right? We need to think about what that looks like for us as people of color doing this work, but also how to bring our comrades and how to bring our brothers and sisters in the community and make this a reality, because we talk about liberation, we talk about freedom, and what does that really look like for us? But we, as a collective of oppressed people, need to continue educating ourselves in the best ways we can, and building on what we know to be, what we can envision as a liberated future. So, yeah, keep the movement going, and then the importance of just staying informed and knowing the strategy of your enemies, because they, in fact, are proving to be our enemies.
Let me ask y'all. My colleagues have been quiet. I want them to jump in. I think Adema fell off because I really wanted that. Adema has the most history of all of my colleagues on some of these questions, right? But Don and Ed, is there any questions you want to raise to our guests?
No, I would like to know, have you thought about taking a delegation of people out there so that people can, go down there and see what's going on for themselves and get involved, like a hands-on type of thing, as opposed to, you go and bringing back the information. Sometimes people like to be, be in, be a part of it and doing. They like to do the work and be a part of the work.
Well, that for ours, I was part of a delegation that went down, and so
Okay.
was Chris. We both were in part of delegations,
Hmm.
but different delegations. He was in a
Right.
different, more eastern part of the island. As an
Right.
Afro-Cuban woman, as an Afro-Cuban and Puerto Rican woman, so I'm
Hmm.
dealing with two struggles here. Plus,
Right. Hmm.
plus the struggle of the oppressed peoples in these so-called divided states of America. So, dealing with triple on my end. But we all often, encourage people to go to Cuba or be a part of an organization so they can, one, be educated on the history of Cuba
Hmm.
and um, some of again, the oppressive forces that have impacted Cuba over the years, i.e., the blockade, the U.S. blockade on Cuba, the sanctions on Cuba, the ongoing sanctions on Cuba. The Joe Biden's administration doubled down on
Hmm.
Trump's policies of in regards to the blockade on Cuba. And a lot of people don't
Hmm.
know that. And I often, even in my friend circles, update them and educate them. And a lot of them see the work that I'm doing on the ground in Cuba, whether it's bringing aid to Cuba or whether it's again working on things like this oral histories project, which overlaps with my curatorial work, but also my movement work with the Cuba C coalition.
Hmm.
So again, it's about organizing and educating, but we love to have people, come down and learn and do the work
Right.
on the ground as well. And Chris, in fact, he spoke about that a little earlier. They did a significant amount of work on the ground, and also was doing education workshops alongside
Hmm.
folks in the community, much like we were. In the last day that I was there, we were in community, one of the most the Afro-Cuban communities, bringing aid and making sure that we are organizing around bringing um, the provinces like Camagüey the aid that they needed, because a lot of children don't have shoes and it's very expensive because of the U.S. blockade, the impact of the U.S. blockade. So there's a significant amount of economic distress on those particular areas because
Okay.
something as far as like tennis shoes or what we call sneakers in New York, sneakers cost a significant amount for
Hmm.
and a single mother or someone without a lot of income cannot afford to buy shoes for their children, and which are much needed, and especially in rural areas,
Hmm.
where children have to often walk long distances, miles to school. So these are things that we are organizing on the ground and we are doing on the ground. And like I said, the Mr. Ramos Brigade have been doing this for years, and they've been bringing people from the United States to Cuba for many years. Um, and Chris can speak to that more because that's this the organization he came on the delegation with. My delegation, the delegation I came with, is different from the actual organization who sent me there. My organization who sent me there is the Cuba C, New York, New Jersey, Cuba C Coalition, and you can put their website in the chat as well.
Mhm.
Um, the Pan African organization that I attended with was organized by a different party, which is the Lee Robinson's group, which is
The
the
African
African
Witness
Awareness
Association.
Association. Um, but the ones who sent me there to represent as a delegate was Cuba C, which is who I actually the actual organization that I do work with, do movement work with on the ground.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I just also wanted to add that the Vince Reynolds Brigade also has a New York, New Jersey chapter. The New Jersey chapter is not as populated, so
Hmm.
one of the goals that I personally have is to bring more folks from Jersey because
Okay.
more folks from here do need to be involved with that.
Hmm.
So to that point, yes, we have a
And
local organizing committee, and I think that that's something that we could tap in on. So yeah.
and even some of the students from the school, Chris, just during one of the breaks, to let them go down and just, you know, um, I know that we do missionary trips out of Orange to one of the churches. They go to Haiti every August, but I think those those type of opportunities will be life changing for young people if they got to be a part of something like that.
Agreed.
Ed, you should hear Raz talk about when he went to Cuba in the '90s,
Mm.
right? Just put a pin in that because this is something that he'll give you some loaded stories about, because it was an international youth conference
Okay.
that Raz participated in the early '90s, and of course we have Munifa on regularly. Munifa's Malcolm X grassroots movement, the hip hop connection between our forces here and our forces in Cuba were profound from the '90s, even moving forward since then. Chris mentioned the Honda Abiodun. The Honda was, an underground war, an unsung underground warrior here in our struggles. He was with Matulu and Sekou and Asada and all of them here,
Hero.
doing some very brave things. She became known as the grandmother of Cuban hip hop by virtue of the rooting role that she played between the two cultures. The young folks in the two cultures trying to keep it conscious on the matter of hip hop, right? And that's a whole nother conversation that we need to bring Monifa and some of those, some of those heads from those days on about hip hop in Cuba. But folks need to remember this is a hip hop political talk show, right? And the how hip hop has emerged in Cuba is something profound. So let's wind up this conversation with both of your impressions of where hip hop is now in Cuba.
I can speak to that directly because I organized a hip hop exhibition, Afro-Cuban hip hop.
Oh, tell us about it.
Yeah, so Obsession is a hip hop group that has been doing political work on the ground for years.
Yes.
And I actually met some Cuban hip hop artists at the jazz festival when I was there, because the jazz festival was happening simultaneously while I was there. But there's some new hip hop artists that are also coming out of Cuba. There's a woman, her name escapes me, but I'm gonna send it to y'all. She is doing some dynamic work, and she's also a radical and an organizer on the ground in Cuba. But yeah, I've been organizing. There's also an Afrobeats film that's also has hip hop artists, done by my friend Eli Fantauzi, who's Puerto Rican. And he did a film on the movement of how Afrobeat started in Cuba with hip hop artists organizing around it too. And it's called Bacaso Cuba. And so y'all should definitely check that out. And they do film screenings all over as well. And they've been going to Cuba organizing in solidarity since the 90s as well, in early 2000s. And they're out of the Bay Area. They were raised in the Bay Area, but but Eli lives here in Puerto Rico too. So he's my comrade. I actually met him in Puerto Rico when I was organizing the Afro-Cuban hip hop exhibition in 2017. And Martha Diaz is another one that is very well versed. So if you want to have a show specifically on Afro-Cuban hip hop, Martha Diaz would be the contact for you, Baba.
We got to
Also
talk about that. We got to
briefly
talk
talk
about that.
Huh?
We got to talk about making that happen. Right on.
Yeah. So I can, it showed, and there's a couple of other folks. There's some archives too that we could tap into. And I will say, when we have the conference, there's also going to be a Cuban, there's going to be an exhibition on site at the conference as well. It won't be the Cuban hip hop one, but it will be an exhibition of Cuban solidarity there as well. And also shout out to Gail. Gail spoke at the conference, the international conference that I attended and spoke at in Cuba. So Gail Walker again is still doing the movement work, still out here fighting the good fight as well. But yeah, shout out to Cuba and the hip hop generation. There's also another Danae. Is that her name? Danae is another hip hop artist, and I'll send you her information as well. I've been following for years. And she's dynamic, a very talented artist, hip hop queen over there in Cuba. So yeah.
Chris, did you get a chance to sample to get a taste of some hip hop when you were there?
I mean, yeah, to some extent, we were able to meet with some like this youth organization we're in Camagüey. There's a youth organization of artists. So like there were several artists that, whether they, some of them were dancers, some of them were, different, in different kinds of cultural expressions. A few of them were hip hop artists. So we got to spend some time with them, and not nearly to the same extent, but yeah.
Awesome. Great share, y'all. Great share. Great to have you on. And Donna, you want to ask them our ritual question? We close up.
Yes. As you know, this is a hip hop political show. So we asked all of our guests a very important question. And I'm going to start with you, sis. And the question is, when you're out doing the work, preparing for the work, what hip hop artist, individual or group do you listen to that keeps you inspired and helps build your momentum up as you go do this work?
I probably mentioned this before, but Black Thought is a huge influence
Yes.
Yes, you did.
for me. So
Yes, you did.
always has been. Black Thought is just very, very knowledgeable. Again, he's always been had a pulse on the political movements happening around the world. He's always had a pulse on local movements. He's had a pulse on any the issues around political prisoners. So Black Thought is somebody that I look to and listen to and am inspired by constantly. Also Common. Common is, I'm a fan, and he's also been somebody that has been in tune from day one when he was Common Sense. Before he dropped that part of his name, and then also he was uh, in part and involved in a lot of political movements as well. And who else? I mean, Wu-Tang on a good day. Wu-Tang forever. Wu-Tang for the kids too. So yeah, Wu-Tang is also another group that I look to and always have. Yeah, but Black Thought, let's go. Black Thought always. And, Common
Yeah.
too.
And Common is on Broadway right now, quiet as kept. Right, and the play that he's in, is actually raising some eyebrows. He's doing pretty well with that. Chris, what say you?
Well, I'm gonna shout out. I know I shout out my comrade sister Felicia last time, but
Alicia Bass, that's right.
yeah, but this time this time I'm gonna say Rebel Diaz. They're a hip hop group originally from Chile.
That's
They
right.
do make a lot of revolutionary music, dedicated to internationalist efforts, dedicated to local organizing, whether they be in Chicago or the South Bronx. And if you check them out on YouTube, there's some good songs about Mumia, about Fidel, and Hugo Chavez, and several other subjects. So, yeah.
Quick story as you go out. Quick Rebel Diaz story. They had a center. They had a spot in the South Bronx, and on the roof they created this big mural of Mumia. Of course, the police went nuts and then came after them. And it ultimately got shut down, right? But they were doing some incredible people's insurgent art. For a moment, we know Rebel Diaz well. So this is a great share, y'all. Great share. Great to have y'all on. Definitely got to have you back on the different. We get close to the conference, we'll lift that up next week. And Ed, I'm not even sure if I can be back on next week. I want everybody to appreciate that my older comrade from the party, Rosemary Mealy, who's one who brought me to Vencer Ramos back in the 80s. Oh, God, I'm getting old, right?
She'll be on one of our panels, Baba. She'll be on there.
Yeah, I know. Rosemary is
on
one
the
of the
Afro
mothers of this work.
Diaspora panel. She'll be
It's one
speaking.
of the mother. Rosemary is the author of Memories of a Meeting, Fidel and Malcolm. Right? She documented that epic meeting of Malcolm.
She's also in this.
Oh, that's the one. Her husband, yeah, her husband did that work. Her and Kevin, her husband Sam Anderson, Kevin Powell, and Tony Medina did that work that you just lifted up. That's out of print too. We need to get that back in print, right?
So I found this in Philly, so
Yeah. But Rosemary is going to be at the People's Forum in New York on next Friday, as a part of a special Black History piece that the People's Forum is doing, and she's insisting that I be there. And usually when she tells me to do something without giving me direct order, I usually do it. because that's how we get down. All right. But yeah, so great session, y'all. Great session, right? Y'all definitely will be back. Keep us in the loop. We definitely got to do something before the conference kicks in. All right. All right.
Yes,
We'll
indeed.
see you
Looking forward to
soon.
seeing you all.
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. Powerful segment, y'all. Peace.
Thank you. Thank you.
Peace. Fremo.
Viva Cuba.
Cuba sí lo que o no.
Peace.
Right.
And I got to get my goddamn Spanish together. My Cuban comrades always jack me up because I always say, when I come back, I'm gonna have my Spanish together. They like, he lied.
¿Cómo está usted? ¿Dónde
No, I didn't really
vives?
get it. You know, I know folks who are
Yeah,
translators. They are cold serious about the language question.
yeah. They said if you just immerse yourself, you go down there, you will. The best way is to go to a country and speak it, and you will be forced. Same way people come here, when they come here, they learn English because you have to communicate.
So as we move into the next segment, when we talk about Black history and Black history this month, there's a challenge that's going on from white folks, right? So anytime Black folks put up
No, white folks is doing something real crazy. What they doing now?
so anytime Black folks put up a historical fact, white folks come back and say, and they did that to Principal Kafele today, right?
Really?
So, yeah, because Principal Kafele had put up a historical fact about who, created the third rail. And some white guy challenged him on that in terms of telling Principal Kafele that, this guy came behind the original folk. And Kafele said, he basically said, I really don't have time to challenge you on this, right? I wrote and said that, I chimed in on his page and I said to this white guy who was challenging Kafele, I said that, white supremacy is actually an illness. And that what you really need to do is really go and see a doctor about that. Because the true medication is truth.
Black doctor.
Right? Right. Yeah. So what I told him is that, and I was referring to Kafele, I said that John Henry Clark said that he doesn't debate, right? He doesn't, what was his quote? Remember his quote? He said something about he don't debate.
I know where you're going.
He only debates equals, right? He don't, anybody else, he said, right, he's teaching. So this guy, I don't know if he was an educator because Kafele has a lot of educators on his page.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically said to the guy, "Listen, I don't know what kind of educator you might be, but you trying to debate somebody who's not even your equal, and so you basically are being taught right now by Kafele, and what you really need to do is just shut up and get taught,
learn something."
Right. And that's why Kafele said at the end, he said, I'm going to tell you like Jay-Z said. He said, you're going to learn today. That's how Kafele ended it, right?
Wow.
Because me and him was talking to this guy, and he was writing long dissertations, Larry, right?
I believe it.
And trying to prove his point after Kafele, after he told him who created the third rail and why trains are able to move the way they are. And this white guy was trying, he said, he's done all this research and in this industry. And, and I looked at his page. Apparently he worked for the railroad and all of that. But all of the stuff that he had been taught, Kafele told him he'd been miseducated, right? And that's not unlike white folks, right? That's why they're fighting so hard, right? People in Florida, the governor in Florida, they're fighting so hard because, and Kafele said this when he responded, because they really don't want white people to know the truth. They just really don't want them to get it. And so they're fighting at every level, right, to make sure that those AP courses are not taught, but not so much to black kids, the black kids too, but really white kids.
That's right. You can remember this
history of living so long, and they've been successful at keeping their institutions running. They are afraid that level of white fear is so strong that it prevents them from even being willing to hear the truth. Not that they don't know it's the truth. They just don't even want to hear it.
Nope.
Because it challenges everything they believe.
We used to insist back in our college days when we were doing takeovers and protests and demands. One of our demands we would always include is that certain classes in Africana studies be mandatory for everybody in class. So everybody on campus, so white folks can be educated out of their racism. You know?
Right. That's right.
And that's what that's about. It is a
Yeah.
fear of their children and their grandchildren receiving the kind of real education that will have them say no to racism and all of the privilege and the oppression and the abuse that comes with it.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah. So the person that Kafele said Greenville T. Woods was
Granville
a gentleman.
T. Woods.
Huh?
Yes, Granville T. Woods, brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Created the third rail, and this other, I don't, like I said, because Kafele has a lot of educators on there, you know. It is so, and this is my point, right? You know when John Henry Clark was alive, he and Dr. Ben, right? All of us know how brilliant these brothers were. But can you imagine the challenges, the mental challenges they must have taken at being able to try and correct all of that? I remember I used to see him on Gil Noble's show, and on Sunday morning. And I remember, man, I used to be captivated because they would break it all down. Right. But could you imagine what that was like for them?
Man, I can't.
Yeah, in the 40s and in the 50s.
Yeah.
When they were trying to make a name for themselves as scholars. And then,
right.
There wasn't a black liberation movement to lift them up that would later come along and make the difference.
Right.
Yeah. And
so you think about where we are now in Black history, right? And Larry, you heard the man say this today when y'all came on the show. Obviously Black History Month, we celebrate it every day. Right. But white folk, in their mind, they only give us an opportunity to recognize it, for 1 month, right? So all you happy Negroes can go ahead and be happy and recognize your culture for 1 month, right? No, we Black all year long, y'all.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so those struggles that we're having, we having them constantly. And here's the thing: it seeps up in every area of our life, right?
That's right.
When we're dealing with white folk, and the problem is that the white supremacy is so strong that they don't even know they're racist, right?
Right.
Or they know they're racist, but they won't admit it. So that's why when we call them on it, right, that's a problem for them. And they don't understand how that affects people. And I'm telling you how it affects people in the legal system every day. Because these judges refuse to see the fact that their level of miseducation that they can't bring into it. Not even on one level, they cannot bring the human factor. But on the other level, they can't bring the cultural factor. And that's the problem with Ilhan Omar, right? When she says on one level, she says, how can you ask me not to bring my culture into what I'm dealing with? But that is not being asked of any other elected official in Congress to do that.
Right.
So when they're voting, that's not being asked of them. But for Black folk, we're going to say, well, you cannot bring any of that of your experiences to that. And remember the sister from the Spanish sister from the Bronx. Remember when she got on the Supreme Court? Remember what she said in her hearing? She said she brings all of that.
Maria.
Huh?
Sonia Soto Maria.
Yeah, Sonia Soto. Yeah. She said, Larry, she bring all that when she come.
That's right.
He said, all of that's coming with me.
He said she was the wise Latina.
Yeah.
And they tried to attack her for that. Because she said she was wise. I visited Dr. Clark at his home once on Convent Avenue in Harlem.
Yeah, that's right.
And Dr. Clark said to me, we had a conversation, but one of the things that stuck with me, he said, there would be no need for Black history if they just taught the truth.
That's right.
And that was so simple yet so profoundly true, you know. And what is the inverse of that? That without Black history, you're teaching a lie. And this is why Black history is the enemy of white supremacy, because Black history brings the truth and white supremacy is a lie. And this is why they're trying to outlaw. Can you believe that this is where we're at now at the end of the first quarter of the 21st century? That they're actually banning Black history, criminalizing the teaching of Black history.
Criminalized.
Teachers are removing books from their classroom libraries for fear of being arrested and charged with a felony. In Virginia,
Wow.
they didn't even want Dr. King in the curriculum. The first, the revised curriculum they issued didn't even have Martin Luther King in it. And then DeSantis, you saw, I believe this is what you're referring to, Brother Ed, is that the college board caved in. They try to say they didn't. But if it wasn't DeSantis, it was some of these right-wing people. They caved in and took out some of the most notable events of the Black history course that's going to be taught across the country. The college board caved to white supremacy. And this is a very, people, you know, in school, in high school, they gave us that book, right? We had to study, did y'all have it? 1984 by George Orwell.
Orwell, yes.
And, you know, you read George Orwell, and that was supposed to be a critique of Russian society, a critique of communism. But now it looks like it's more of a critique of American capitalist society than it does Russian society, because everything they accuse Russia of is going on right here.
That's
censorship, banning,
double speak,
historical revision, double speak. You know, it's madness, and it resembles so much what happened under Hitler prior to the beginning of World War II. They burned books. I've seen pictures of them, Nazis in uniform, going in libraries and schools, carrying out armfuls of books, and then having book burnings. You know, just today down there in Alabama, they canceled an award-winning Black author because one white parent somehow felt threatened by what he might say. You know, this see, and then when you draw back, because you use a microscope, right, to go and look into something. But when you want to draw back and see the whole picture, you use a telescope. And when you draw back to use a telescope, you see that on one hand, they introduced 440 bills to prevent Black people from voting. 440 bills introduced in every state in the nation. But you ain't heard that they introduced 500 bills that have something to do with banning what they call CRT, but CRT is just a code word. It's a code word for Black history, for Black studies. Them white people don't know what CRT is, critical race theory, the intersection of institutional racism and the law. They don't know that. They called Martin Luther King CRT. And I ain't even backing up from CRT. Look, they gonna teach the theory of evolution by Darwin. Isn't that, don't they call it a theory? It's called the theory of evolution. They teach the theory of relativity by Albert Einstein. It's a theory. If they can teach those theories, they can teach critical race theory about racism in this country. But that's only taught at the college level. These laws that DeSantis in Florida and Youngkin in Virginia and these other racist governors, these are all aimed at public schools and public colleges, state-supported colleges. So what they're doing, they taking away your right to vote with one hand, then taking away the knowledge of how we got the right to vote with the other hand.
Right.
That's a form of totalitarianism.
Right.
And it should be, and what arouses me the most is that you can hear a pin drop. Yeah. You hardly hear anybody talking about it. I refer people to a public letter that was issued day before yesterday by Khalil Gibran Muhammad. Mm-hmm. Remember the brother that used to head up to Schaumburg?
That's right. Elijah Muhammad's great grandson.
200 academics, Black studies and Black history professors signed on to this letter condemning the College Board for caving into white supremacy, condemning all these efforts to stop the teaching of Black history. POP, we're calling a demonstration for the last Saturday in this month, a demonstration to protest the ban.
It's February 26th.
Right, 25th, Saturday the 25th at the
that's right.
Lincoln statue, 12 Springfield Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. But where are all these other college professors? Where all these Black studies? Man, that stuff is going to be going. And see, here's the thing that gets me upset the most. In one sense, I'm glad this happened, because this attack on Black studies did not begin with DeSantis. This has been going on for 25 years or more. On some colleges, there are fewer Black professors teaching today than there were in 1985. Because we were still kind of at the tail end, the backwind of the Black Power movement. They have been whittling down, and in some cases even eliminating Black studies departments. And Black people have some responsibility in this too, because right now at some colleges, people are saying you don't need to study Black studies. I'm talking about they're Black people.
Wow.
Who's saying
that's right?
You don't need to study Black studies. What do you need that for? This is exactly. Did y'all hear what DeSantis said? Did you hear what he said? Him and his Secretary of Education. He said, quote, Black history has no educational value.
That's exactly what he said.
I mean, goddamn, why didn't the whole damn thing blow up when he said that?
That's right.
People just slide right along. Remember the other thing that Frederick Douglass said. He said the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those that they oppress. They can only go so far as you let them go.
Right.
That to have a system of oppression, in fact, requires compliance from the oppressed.
Right.
What did Carter G. Woodson say? This is his month. He created Black history. You know what Carter G. Woodson says in The Miseducation of the Negro? He said that if you have a man go to the back door all his life, when he gets to a house that has no back door,
he will create one.
He
himself.
will make one.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. Right. Absolutely a nightmare, brother. Brother Rick.
Who has? Go ahead.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good, brother.
I'm sorry I'm late. I was on another Zoom. How you doing?
Yeah. Where's Marlene? She was supposed to come on with you.
Yeah, I don't know where she's at, but she sent me a link. I was on another Zoom. But I caught it on the tail end of your conversation. But you know, one of the main things is that we ourselves have limited ourselves because we're still under our oppressors, and they prove to us every day that we're still their possession. Okay, when you understand the history of the white man, he is by definition a Caucasian. A Caucasian is a cave dweller. Where are those cages of his origins and his beginnings? In Georgia, Russia. So we talk about what Orwell talked about with these Russians and the thinking of these people over there. Don't forget, after World War II, America pretty much consolidated all the Nazis like Werner von Braun and all these other Nazis and brought them over here and made them a part of the United States government. So it's a continuation of the origins of white supremacy, which started in Europe and coming over here to our land, which I don't believe in black history. I believe in indigenous history, or call it the history of gods and goddesses, but we're beyond black. They're the ones that put the label on us back in the 1600s, and it's time for us to give it back to them.
Hey, Zaid, why don't you go on and give the introduction who this brother is? You know, so
Right, yeah. This is we were actually supposed to have Merlene Hilaire on, and Rick was supposed to join it because tomorrow is a national day of action in support of what happened to Tyree Nichols and the people of Memphis and folks in Inglewood in the name of Bernard Placide Jr., Merlene's son, who was killed in September by Inglewood police officers. They're having an action to honor that tomorrow in Inglewood. So Rick, just jump in and tell us about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, well, tomorrow, you know, based off of the Zoom that we had with Pop and the sister Amber, what she was
Amber
talking
Sherman.
about was
We were trying to get Amber on.
Amber Sherman. She was actually talking about doing this national day of outrage for Tyree Nichols. So in solidarity with the Tyree Nichols situation, and also in conjunction with Bernard Placide Jr. and all the victims of police brutality, we planned on rallying in front of the Inglewood Police Department at noon tomorrow, regardless of the weather, rain, hail, snow, or sleet, and just, you know, stand in front of the police department and demand that the officer that took Bernard's life be terminated, and demand that, you know, the city of Inglewood engage in some meaningful conversations with people that have been in the struggle for a long time and have some good ideas about police reforms, like yourself and Larry Ham and other people that have been out in the struggle, that are, you know, voices of the people that, you know, want to have meaningful change to where we could prevent the culture of violence by those that are so-called sworn to protect from indiscriminately killing us with impunity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's what we do know.
Hold on a second, Donald. Now,
okay.
What time, and give the address to Rick, so we got that right.
Sorry about that. 75 South Van Brunt Street, and we're looking to kick off around noon.
Go ahead, Donna.
No, I was going to say what we do know after watching Memphis, that these cases can be processed in a expedient way. Watching how these 5 officers, maybe it was because they were black, or maybe Memphis just handles things different, but of all the cases, I think there was one other case, and there was a case where it was a man of color involved as well. They moved them along really quick, and you know, we've seen, and it's amazing to just watch how fast cases move along. So we know it can be done.
Yeah, your connection is not the best, Donna, but your point is well taken. And I think you're talking about the Muhammad Noor case in Minneapolis. Muhammad Noor shot was a Somali police officer, right? Who
yes.
Mm-hmm. Right, and wound up doing 10 years and was brought to justice relatively quickly when that happened. And I appreciate you lifting up the question of weather tomorrow. Demo, can you remember us out at that Orange City Hall during the Earl Faison days. It was 1 degree. I think it was January 15th, like 2000 was 1 degree. We were all out there anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
I think y'all are doing the right thing, Rick, going out there.
Yeah, well, if I could say, I agree with the sister that just spoke, and I listened to Benjamin Crump's words at the funeral for Tyree Nichols, and he says that from here on in,
20 days.
20 days. So from here on in, we have to take this, and the vice president and the president and the Dixiecratic Party and the movers and shakers in Washington need to know that the days of 2 years, 3 years, 6 years waiting for some kind of answer from a grand jury that is going to refuse to indict these murderous police, those days are long gone. So everything happens for a reason. And unfortunately, Memphis is being used not only for a negative, but for a positive. Moving forward, we see that it's very possible to charge police when they've been caught on camera doing something that is egregious and wrong that demands immediate action. Not telling people to come back later. Let's try to edit the video and try to, let these officers off easy with a pension and some incentives to retire, but to immediately prosecute them, immediately fire them, immediately put them in jail, and immediately send a message to people that we will hold those that are held to a higher standard accountable for their actions.
But you know what? What we learned today, though, is what you said today, Larry, on the mayor's show today. The city show, when you said that moved as quickly as it did, pretty much because of the involvement of the mayor's office. Right. And remember, the mayor agreed with you.
Right.
Because and you were stating that it was the level of protest that was happening on that bridge.
That's right.
That caused them to move. So the one thing that we do know is
that got suppressed.
Right. The one thing that we do know is that it is, and this is why, Larry, what you said today is important. And I said this to Zaid, and I said this to Angelo on Wednesday, and I told him that what we can't do is and you said this today too, Larry, and what I said to Angelo is that as we organize these 100 organizations for the convention, that we can't forget these local organizations, right? Because you don't get to Crump and Sharpton without them brothers on that bridge, without them putting pressure on the mayor to make that phone call to the chief and get the chief to say, no, we're going to let these guys go because we get ready to release this video and it's going to be bad, and that decision. Those local organizations, Larry, are extremely important, right?
That's right.
Remember, Zaid, I said that to you. I said that's why, we can generate the publicity for the convention, and everybody, all the big organizations, but that is not what Amiri wanted to do in 72, right? And if the mayor says let's pick up where his dad left off at, it's got to be about organizing the organizations and allowing them to have a say-so and what that Black agenda look like. Why? Because they're the ones that are pushing pushing the policies forward. They're the ones that are making things happen, right?
Agreed.
But they don't get they're not getting that level of visibility that they should be getting.
Yeah, it's always been the foot soldiers.
How many people know about that? Or those people that were on that bridge, right?
Nobody.
I didn't know until I heard you talking about it.
Exactly.
If I could just
say, have Amber last night.
If I could just say, I'm sorry, but it was pretty much the same thing with the March on Washington. The March on Washington took place, and Malcolm spoke about it. It was the grassroots organizations that pretty much mobilized the people for the March on Washington. But being that King was a national known figure, he was pretty much promoted to the head of it. But the grassroots is really what brought that March on Washington together.
True. That's true. That's true. No, Ed, what you're saying is so true. And see, the media has a role in this, right? Because if you just go by what people read in the newspapers about Memphis, and you went by the television reports, what people saw, and you went by the radio reports, what people heard, you would have thought the police chief was really the star of all of this.
Right.
That she made this decision. You know, I mean, yes, in the final analysis, they couldn't have been fired without her say so, but people don't know that they had seized the bridge of a major highway and wasn't nothing moving. And you know what else? They didn't even get arrested. I asked Amber that last night. Nobody got arrested. You know why? Because this mess was so heinous that they thought black people were ready to explode. All they were thinking about was the aftermath of George Floyd and the protests in every city around the country and in every major city around the world. And they thought that this was going to trigger people to do more than they did behind George Floyd.
Right.
So when the mayor called Amber was up on the bridge. The mayor called her, told her, y'all got to get off the bridge. She said, we're not getting off until you disband the Scorpion unit.
Right.
He said, no, I'm not doing that. They hung up the phone and they stayed there more hours. He called back 3 or 4 hours later.
Right.
Why y'all not off the bridge? We're not leaving the bridge until you disband the Scorpion.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And then he told the chief, because all of the cars was backed up, all that media was there. See, the media was showing it down there in Tennessee, but they wasn't showing it to the rest of the country.
That's right. Absolutely.
So you thinking that the police chief on her own consciousness, you know what I'm saying, may had a realization. The thing that they don't tell you is that she was the one that formed the damn Scorpion unit.
I heard you say that today, Larry. I heard
she formed the Scorpion unit.
Yeah.
They had a Scorpion unit in Atlanta.
Had the Red Dog
she
in
came
Atlanta.
to Memphis, and one of the first things she did was organize. So she disbanded the thing that she formed.
Right.
But
She
you
had
wouldn't
the Red
know all
Dog in
that from the
Atlanta.
media. You would think that she was the most progressive police chief in the world. And I'm not taking anything away from her, because the story could have been different. The story could have been that she didn't disband, but she did. So I give her credit for that. But you can't leave out the action that the people took.
That's right.
That led to that.
That's right. That's right. And that's the point, Larry, when you said that, and as I was talking to Zaid and Angelo, what I was saying, that we see, because like you said, who knew that, right? And because when I saw the funeral, I saw the family turned around to the people who was up in the pew, up in the
the quiet section,
and applauded them, but that's all they got, right? None of their representatives came down, because I heard the mother say that if it had not been for them, they would never have gotten to Crump. They would never have gotten to Sharpton. So why don't we know who they are?
Because the media won't tell us. Because the media does not want to show the masses of people in movement. Because when the masses of people see movement, they start moving. You see people moving. They were like, yeah, let's get this on. And then I just wanted to go back a minute and say Rick Wilby was right. After World War II, during World War II, Werner von Braun was the primary engineer in charge of the V6 rocket. That was going to be Hitler's secret weapon, because there had been no rockets before V6. U.S. didn't have no rockets. They had cannon that could shoot missiles far, but they didn't have any rocket. There were two things going on: the invention of the rocket and the race to invent an atomic bomb. Now, I do think they fired a couple of V6s if that's the number. Maybe it was V2. It might have been V2. It's V something. But they might have fired a couple of them at London. So, you know, the Germans were racing to try and invent atomic bomb, but the U.S. beat them to it in the Manhattan Project.
That's right.
Now, the Manhattan Project is mentioned in popular culture. What was that movie? Dr. Manhattan? Was that the movie? What was that movie where Dr. Manhattan was? You know, the Marvel? Anyway, it was the Manhattan Project. It really was a Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
Right.
And Oppenheimer was one that worked on it, and they used Einstein's theories to help come up with the splitting of the atomic bomb. So anyway, what Rick was saying was that when World War II ended, they brought von Braun to the U.S.
That's right.
and a whole lot of other German
That's
scientists.
Right. That's right.
They founded NASA.
That's right.
NASA
That's right.
was founded. The first leader of NASA was a Nazi scientist.
That's right.
And they gave all these Nazis new identities, new names, you know, and
security clearance,
and
all of those things.
That's right. So, you know, the only thing I would say to Rick is that Europe learned it from the United States. When you read Hitler, what's his Mein Kampf?
Mein Kampf.
When you read Hitler's Mein Kampf, he's talking admirably, like it's his dream come true. Racial segregation in America. They modeled their laws on racial segregation in Germany, that is Jews and Christians, whatever. And it wasn't just Jews. There were the Romani people, which we call what do we call them? The gypsy peoples, you know, and others. You know, Hitler modeled his laws of segregation on the laws of segregation in the US. The concentration camps in Germany were modeled on Native American reservations.
That's right.
Mussolini, people think Hitler invented fascism. No, Mussolini invented fascism. Mussolini was before Hitler. And do you know what the New York Times called Mussolini's red shirts? He called them the New York Times called them the Ku Klux Klan of Italy.
Wow.
Fascism is based in part on the racist policies of the United States.
Experience. That's right.
And see, we didn't learn it like that. Yep. You know, we learned it like the other way around.
Yep.
And it's almost like we got to unlearn everything we learned.
Yep.
You know, I didn't know this. I didn't know that the South Africans, I thought apartheid was invented there. Apartheid was Jim Crow segregation applied to South Africa. There was no official apartheid policy in South Africa before the 20th century.
That's right. That's right.
That's you know? Right.
Yeah.
So all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. No, that's all right. That exposition was absolutely necessary because that's underneath all this stuff and what this country is trying to do.
Yeah, brother Zahid, if I could just say one thing.
Let me get Merlene in because we running down and she was late getting on. Merlene, I want to welcome you back. Right. I know we've got you've been carrying a lot, and I'm very proud of how you've been managing. And it's Auntie, right? It's Miriam and Merlene, right? Right. You've been carrying a lot, and tomorrow you're going to step out in solidarity with Tyree Nichols in Inglewood. How are you managing? How are you feeling? How did you respond to what you saw and learned about what happened to Tyree in Memphis?
Oh my goodness, I feel terrified. When I saw the video, it reminded me the same thing for my son. And I was like shaking, you know. And then I thank God because that's the strength God gave me. Every time something happened, He's just come back to me again. And I'm still here. I think it's because, and I've been praying too, and I'm very, very like to imagine how she felt when the mother of Terry when she saw the video because it was terrified for me and for her too, I believe. Very sorry for her loss as well. And the same justice is she's asking for her son is the same one I'm asking for my son too, because even though they have all the publicity about the story, but I know mine is different, but it's the same thing we asking, and this is the same police brutality we have, because she has a 5 or 6 police officer who was a part of killing her son, and I have 3 police officers who killed my son too. That's means it's the same crime we've been committed about our sons, and we're still fighting for justice, my family and I. And I thank God for the support I have from people like Rick and all other supporters we have on the Zoom with us. We've been fighting since that, and we're gonna continue to fight for justice for Bernard. And happy to be on the Zoom with you guys, especially Larry. And I like what you're doing. And Zai, I really appreciate your effort, and you give me strength to go and do what I have to do for Bernard. Every time I'm with you, you give me a lot of hope, and you give me support, and I feel like I'm not alone. And only thing I'm asking, those police officers have to be held for what they did to my son. And I know I cannot do it by myself. Like tomorrow, I know it's a short notice. We're gonna have a rally at the police station, at police department at 12 p.m. Whoever feel we need to come, we can come to support us. But next time, we're gonna have I know more support. We're gonna do it. Everybody gonna know more about it. It's just a short notice, but we're gonna continue to go and to fight for justice for Bernard.
We've been very proud and inspired by you and how you've been holding up and make creating your own presence. That's a
Yes,
voice that will not be denied for your son. You
yes.
inspire us to continue to do what we do. Yeah, that's a lot. Rick, you were going to say something. Go ahead. We'll jump back in. I'm sorry, but I
Oh
want to make
yeah,
sure
being
I
that
heard.
Larry was talking about the Jim Crow and Hitler, but we can't forget about Leopold and the concentration camps in the Congo. So they teach us that history, but I didn't go to a conventional high school. And back in 1496, Pope Alexander VI of Rome signed an edict, and that was actually the template and the cornerstone of white supremacy globally. Started from Portugal in 1444 over to Spain with Christopher Columbus and the Roman Catholic Church creating an edict
You,
that basically classified us as less than human and being property of all the Neanderthals and the Caucasians. So pretty much, America didn't invent the racism; it actually stemmed from the Roman Catholic Church.
Well, there's a great book. Now, Dr. Clark has been cited in this conversation several times. I want everybody to get is Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust.
And
That,
that
that it
predates
walks you right
anything the
through
Caucasians did.
that timeline. That walks you right through that timeline that you just laid out, Rick. And it's a forgotten gem that
Right,
Dr. Clark gave us.
Hitler is a
right.
footnote.
Also, Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams,
Mm-hmm.
and How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter
Walter
Rodney.
Rodney. Walter Rodney's wife follows a lot of our work too, Patricia Rodney, and it's an annual Walter Rodney conference. In fact, they just
Right.
dropped Walter's lectures on the Russian Revolution. Right, that's something that a lot of us who
Oh
come
yeah,
out of
yeah.
America,
I didn't even know about those.
yeah, you got to
I
get
didn't
it.
even. I learned
We,
about
we,
those
all, we
last year.
always
I didn't
look
even know
for
about those.
how to study that thing through some black eyes, right? Well, we had
Man.
those guys in Walter Rodney.
We brought Walter Rodney twice to Princeton to speak. This was in the 70s. We brought him twice, and it wasn't long after his second visit that he was assassinated. He was assassinated in Guyana because he had gone back to form, I think they call it the Workers and Peasants Party of Guyana. And George, what's his name? The George Forbes Burnham?
Forbes Burnham.
Forbes Burnham saw Rodney as a threat, and they put a bomb in his car when he stepped on the accelerator, blew him up.
Now, ironically, they're coming back to tomorrow. Tomorrow is February 4th. February 4th is a loaded day. On the question of police brutality is the anniversary of the horrific slaughter of Amadou Diallo, right? Back on February 4th, 1999, right? Those 46 shot fusillade by supposed to be elite officers. That's the wild contradiction about all of these special squads. They're supposed to represent the best and the most highly trained, and they ain't nothing but thugs. They ain't nothing but thugs. Tomorrow is also the anniversary of the birth of the unconquerable and Lady of Grace, Rosa Parks.
That's right.
Rosa Parks' birthday is tomorrow. So tomorrow, when you go out there, you cold and whatnot, losing your child to the police is even more cold than this minute that we got in the winter. It's supposed to be cold in the winter, right? But it's more cold to lose your child at the hands of the police.
And I don't know if we had an opportunity to lift the young councilwoman's name up who lost her life, who was shot getting out of her car as she was going in the house from Centerville. Still a lot to be learned, but you just young woman with a approach just don't know what's going on, knowing nothing has come out about who the person who was shot at, but let's lift her family up during this time in the city of Saraville as well.
Was she black?
Said she was
black?
Yeah,
she's from Nigeria.
Yes, she was. Yes,
she was Nigerian.
Mm-hmm.
She was married to a young man. From Nigeria.
She's from Newark.
She's a pastor at the church in Newark. Yeah, so we have to find out because the church is in Newark, as a church in Newark.
And somebody killed her.
Her husband was actually in Nigeria doing some work on they were going to open a second location in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
It sounds creepily like some domestic violence, like somebody, whoever was in her life before her husband. It's got that kind of energy.
Well, my wife is Nigerian. She's an Igbo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Keep us posted if you get any updates, but we definitely want to lift her up. And I know her a daughter, without a mom, is just. Whew.
She was only 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
30 years old.
Young woman. Yeah. Just got elected. Young woman.
Mm-hmm. They said she was a rising.
That's right.
She attended Weequay High. Yeah, said she attended Weequay High School.
We see you, right? Thank you for sharing that.
Andy Richards, she attended Weequay High School.
North ties. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's keep her family lifted and just know that. And I know Assemblywoman Timberlake was working on a bill specifically that public officials, where they live, after the situation with the judge last year or the year before last, Assemblywoman started working on a piece of legislation that perhaps that their home, the place where they live should not be listed because people, get upset and do things like this. So,
well, we don't, like Zaid said, we don't really know what happened, right? But
right.
But when someone shoots you multiple times, it usually indicates a crime of passion.
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
not necessarily when somebody, because if it's like a hit, people will drive by, shoot you one time,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
But
Just make sure
when
it's
it's a
done.
crime of passion, people shoot you
That's
multiple times because they mean to kill you,
that's right.
right?
Mm.
Not wound you, not not hurt you, but they want you dead, right? So, and they going through the phone, so hopefully they'll find
Right.
some evidence.
Have
Yeah,
they apprehended anybody yet?
No,
not yet,
no.
no. But
The
what they
FBI is looking into it.
Yeah, what they
They are.
found is that the person ran through the backyard, and they believe he hopped in. He may have parked his car in the parkway and hopped on the parkway. So he knew how.
Mm.
Whoever
Got to
committed
get in
the
and get
crime
out.
knew how to do it and knew how to get away. You
Mhm.
know, so
Yeah.
and you would hope that on the parkway they probably got cameras everywhere, right? So
Right.
hopefully they'll
Hmm.
be able to pinpoint where that person walked through, and maybe there's some footprints, maybe there's some forensic evidence or something that they may find that that person dropped. Because you can sort of go back and do that. I remember being in law school, how they, and when you're going through those things and you're looking at, well, how can you tell these things, and so you'd have these police officers say, well, we come stand in that particular place and we follow those footsteps, and we try to
Hmm.
determine, how far the person was from making the shot. Was he up close? Was he far away? And how long did it take for people to get? If they do their investigation properly, they'll be able to get some evidence. And she's an elected official, so they're going to
Right.
do a little bit more. You know,
Right.
Mhm.
And
because they know.
it always amazes me when you hear people interviewed by the media and they say this never happens in our community.
Yeah,
When
It
I hear
happened
that
today.
statement, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Sure did.
pretty much.
Who?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who?
but one thing,
I hope they catch that person and
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
prosecute them to the
Yeah,
fullest
Fullest
extent
extent of
of
the
the
law.
law.
That's
yeah.
right.
What
I mean,
What were you going to go?
he put fear out there in the entire community, and he put fear amongst elected officials, right?
Of course.
That
Yeah.
that they would be afraid to sit on that council because they are public officials. They're in the public,
They're
you know.
already, this is, you think of these cases that happen. It happened here, and then last year with the judge and her family, and then at the
Yeah,
federal level, Nancy Pelosi's husband is laying on his couch, and it's this whole thing to agree to disagree is not a thing anymore. If I don't like what you stand for, I'm going to take you out. Seems to be the way, and that's not the way of civil discourse.
that's why you hope they stop that. Well, listen, y'all, we
Right.
out of time, so we're gonna go around and give everybody some final words. So,
Let's show y'all.
why don't we start with the sister down at the bottom in regards to her son.
Marlene, what say you as we go out?
And as y'all give your
Shoot, Marlene.
last words, can you just tell us what hip hop artist, individual, or group that you listen to that inspires you?
Is she muted, Zaid?
Yes, she's muted. She's muted, Marlene.
Yes, you're muted. Yes.
Unmute, Merlene.
Oh,
There you
me,
go.
I am a gospel girl.
Okay.
That's okay.
Let us
That's
know who
okay.
inspires who inspires you.
This is
What
gospel.
gospel song? Is it Yolanda Adams and Frederick Hammond? Let
I
us
listen to all
know
of them.
who is.
I listen to all of them. I'm inspired to all of them. Any gospel music, I listen to all of them. And then
Okay.
I feel I feel good. That's my preference. I listen more to gospel music.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, Rick.
yeah, well, thanks for having us on the show again tomorrow, 75 South Van Brunt Street, noon. Come on out, show your support if possible. And I definitely appreciate the continued support from everybody here. And quite naturally, my favorite would be X Clan to the East, my brother. to the east, my brother, to the east with a black boot on that accelerator all day, every day.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a new film out on the East that needs to be appreciated too. Then the East, a lot of folks don't realize was a Black Power bastion for Brooklyn back in the late '60s and early '70s, right? And then Lumumba Carson, his father, Sonny Carson, was one of the driving forces behind making that happen. Go ahead, great, yeah, good one.
Okay.
Go ahead, Larry.
No, I want to support Rick and Merlene and say everybody come out. Everybody who can come out tomorrow to Inglewood, to the police station at 75. Is that South Van Brunt?
Yes, that's South Van Brunt.
South Van Brunt in Inglewood, because that's the right thing to do, because people will be demonstrating around the country tomorrow in solidarity with the struggle for justice for Tyree Nichols. Now, you probably not going to read about that in the media, but it's going to be there. So, try to come out. I'm going to try to get there. I got like 3 or 4 things on the schedule for tomorrow, but I'm going to try at least to come through early if I can. So definitely come out. And also, in terms of rappers, I want to pay tribute. I'm an X-Clan too, X-Clan fan myself. And yes, G2 Weusi was. I went to the East. I actually spoke at the East, believe it or not, when in 1971, right after I was appointed to the Board of Education. G2 Weusi, Big Black, invited me over there to speak at one of the soul sessions. They used to have soul session, like Baraka has soul session here at the East. Yes. But I want to give a shout out to one of the fathers of rap music, and that's Cab Calloway. Y'all don't probably.
Howdy.
Yeah.
Howdy, ho.
I want to talk about Minnie Namucha. I want to go down to St. James Infirmary.
Right.
I mean, that music was racy, boy.
Yeah.
Cab Calloway.
Yeah, that was and swing Cotton Club.
That was
style,
that was the theme music for that era.
Yeah.
That's right. It was. Yep. It was.
So go ahead, Zaid, we get you to.
What Dima should have mentioned, should have restated the call for the demonstration on the 25th in defense of Black history. I'll announce this February 21st, which is the anniversary of Malcolm's assassination.
Yes.
At the Shabazz Center. The great Angela Davis just turned 79 years young, right? One of the mothers of the modern abolitionist movement. A long time honored Black radical will be the guest speaker at the Shabazz Center as we honor the anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X at the Shabazz Center that evening at 7 p.m.
Donna? Are you muted?
Yeah, she's muted.
I see you, Kafele. I see what you said.
And being okay. And when you're talking to your brothers and sisters and listeners, in times like this.
All right, take us home.
So I think that we definitely want to thank Congressman Payne for coming through and doing the Payne report at the top of the show, and we want to thank the folks who came in. The sister who was in Puerto Rico. You want to thank them by name?
Tee Iriarte and Chris Duran, both who came back from Cuba as we get ready for the U.S.-Cuba Normalization Conference on the weekend of March 10th, 11th, and the 12th, right? Strong young voices trying to assert themselves in this work, and we need those young voices to come forward. Very proud of them, glad they were with us. And of course, we're glad to have Merlene and Rick back as they get ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be difficult for me too for a number of reasons too, but I'll certainly try and get out there. But I'm just proud that you continue to step out there on faith, step out there on the honor and the dignity of your family your love for the incredible young man that we're trying to get justice for. Very proud of you.
Yep. And so we thank all of y'all for coming on the show. And I want to thank Larry for bigging up those local people down in Memphis. I think All Politics Are Local was created for just that reason.
Absolutely.
So that we don't
we're gonna get them on too. I may Jay respect. We don't talk. We just got to figure out a time that works. They're in the street, so we got to honor that. But Amber Sherman and their crew, we're gonna get them on.
Yep, that's it. I think that's why we were created, to do what we do. I mean, we're 15 years old now. You know what I mean?
Wow.
There's no other longer running community show in the city of New York like us, right? And so we've earned our stripes. But we've earned our stripes.
And I'm sorry.
I'll let you have it, Donna. We've
I'm
earned
sorry.
our on local organizations, right? And and because we've got Congress people and mayors and all of that, and we're grateful, but we're never going to forget those local organizations that push them up. And because those are the organizations that the mayor come from, right?
Right on.
And
right
so
on.
we want to make sure we continue to push those grassroots organizations, and we want to hear from those brothers and sisters in Memphis, and we appreciate that. And thank you, Larry. All right, Donna, I'll let you go. Let you have it.
No, I just wanted to announce, if we didn't know, that Dr. Pritchard had been elevated, and we probably should have him back.
In African Studies.
He's what?
Yes.
He was elevated to interim chair of Africana Studies until they find someone to fill that post.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's something that shouldn't have taken 9 years to figure out. He's been there forever.
And I had a chance to talk to him, and he said we need to go back and get that magazine and put it in reprint. And that's what he said today.
But all I can tell you is, had not it been for Dr. Pritchard and Sells on that campus, trust me, them white folks would have took us off of there a long time ago.
Wow.
Absolutely. But it was those two professors on that campus. Every time the white folks came for us, we called on Sells and Pritchard, and and they allowed young black students to have their own independent voice, and our voice, believe it or not, became national. So we were all over the country, and we were using their equipment because we didn't have no money, but because we paid all that student fees, we had a right to use their labs, and we did just that. While everybody else was partying, Larry, we was in the lab all night creating a magazine.
Wow.
Yep. And we still got all those interviews and recordings and all of that stuff.
That stuff. There's time to digitize that stuff, man. That's another conversation we need to have.
And yeah, you're right. And I'm gonna tell you something. Like, we have a 30-year-old young Gary Bird on tape. You know what I mean?
Really?
Mm-hmm. He was in his 30s, right, when he was doing the Apollo Theater, right up at the Apollo.
Wow.
We got him, on tape, 2 interviews. And he would be amazed to hear himself talk about all
I have to reach out to him.
You got that interview with Gary Bird and Bob Marley?
Not Bob Marley. No.
Gary Bird did an interview with Bob Marley in 1970, might have been 72, 73, like when his music got big here in the U.S.
I think I remember hearing him interview Bob when Bob was telling him that he worked at the Ford Motor plant or something like that.
Yeah, Delaware.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But listen, like I told you before, you got
Marley ties. I gotta end the show, but we'll talk offline. So listen, y'all, we'll see y'all next week right here on All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show.
Thank you.
Don't stop.
Good night.